My name is Danny Walker. I'm 29 years old, about 20% legally disabled, married, but not for much longer, and currently unemployed. Before everything fell apart, I was a policeman in Harlan, a medium-sized town in West Virginia. I also served as a tank gunner in the Army Reserves. Like many others in 2002, I kept up with the news and wasn't surprised when my unit got activated in the lead-up to the Second Gulf War. The orders came down, and we were scheduled for a 12-month deployment starting in January 2003. Emma and I had waited to get married until I was settled in my career, and we could afford a house. Life had already thrown us some challenges. I spent time away for training, and Emma had been managing serious illnesses in her family. But by then, we had finally moved past those struggles. When my activation came through, we were still newlyweds, married just 8 months. Leaving was devastating for both of us. Emma was a shy, pretty little blonde that I've known almost all of my life. She was my high school sweetheart, and we had both been virgins when we finally made love after graduation. She and her mom and dad, Elise and Clay, along with my older sister Diane, are the only family that I have. When the time came to ship out, there were lots of promises to write, but I knew that wasn't going to happen. None of them were big on letter writing. So off we went. After sitting in Kuwaiti bunkers at night and tearing around the Kuwaiti desert on maneuvers by day for 2 months, we finally got some action orders. I didn't know how my tank mates felt, but I had a hard, sour feeling in the pit of my stomach. This would be my first time in combat, and I just prayed that I would not let my guys and my country down. I hoped that I would not turn coward if things went badly. You never can know for sure until the time comes, I thought. We went across the border shortly after Baghdad got hit by the big shock and awe bombardment. We weren't in the news, but we were in the first offensive strike. We were probing the Iraqi defenses. What kinds of tank strength did they have? We had very little intel from inside Iraq. My tank was out ahead of our line on the far right. I'm not bragging when I say we had the best electronics in the world. Flat out fact. Our sights incorporated long-distance infrared technology, meaning we could detect the heat signature of a tank at a considerable distance. I think the true range may still be classified. Anyway, I saw the signatures of 2 tanks off to our right. I signaled the skipper, and he tapped our driver, Jubal, to stop. I looked them over and showed Skip the images. It looked like they were turned toward the east. He signaled our find back to our line commander by tight beam infrared. Undetectable. I was surprised that I could see them plain as day, and they had no clue we were there. They were old technology tanks, Soviet 1972 style. T-72s for short. We had conflicting reports on how our cannon would do against their armor and vice versa. I said something about that to Skip as he was copying the response back from the line commander. He said, "We are sure as hell about to find out. We're going at them. This war is officially on. Load AP." That last was to Pete, my loader, who let out a whoop. Skip and Pete were real mountain boys, born hellraisers. APs were armor-piercing rounds. The hope was that they would penetrate their armor and blow up the inside. If I hit them, of course. We were on the move and closing as fast as Jubal could drive in the moonlight. I still don't think they detected us electronically. In the night, air sound carries quite a distance, and a tank going hard is a damn noisy thing. There's a reason we wear ear protective headsets. If they were unbuttoned and on lookout, they'd have heard us for certain. I kept the tank on the right in my sights. I saw the flare of a cannon firing, but it was aimed to the side, toward the general direction of Kuwait. I guess their intel was that we were coming straight at them, which was sort of true, but they figured the attack had to come directly from the east, so they were firing that way on general principles. Once they fired, Skipper tapped me on the shoulder, and I returned fire. My first round was slightly over. Pete reloaded fast. My second was direct on the base of the turret. Big green bloom of an explosion in the scope. As Pete reloaded, I slid my aiming point slightly left. That target began to move, trying to take evasive action and turn toward us. The commander was no dummy. He saw that my first shot was over and figured correctly that we were coming from his right. Made no difference. I put one directly on his front, just short and maybe a tad to the left of center. He fired back at us, but he still didn't have us acquired. Just shooting by guess and by God. My second shot got him just under the cannon. I could see the turret rock from an explosion inside. Then I saw him jolt from another round hitting him, but it wasn't from me. The next tank to our left had followed us and had winged off a shot themselves to be in on the kill. Our targets were burning and blowing up. The skipper stopped, and we went up to check it out. Oh, my, what a sight it was. They lit up the night sky. Off to our left, we heard other tank-to-tank duels going on. We were ordered to veer slightly left and move forward, but we saw no more enemy tanks worth shooting at. We did see quite a few of them hauling away from us. The results of that night's action answered half the question. That 30-year-old armor of theirs could not withstand our AP rounds. We still didn't know what their stuff would do to ours because they hadn't made a hit on any of ours yet. Somebody higher up took the kill credit for tank number 2 away from us and awarded it to the party crashers on the left, but the next echelon up rolled that partially back and made it a joint kill. There was some talk about a unit citation medal for my tank. We were probably the first unit to make a kill in the ground operation, but nothing ever came of that. Neither Skip nor I saw anyone get out of the 2 tanks we blew up. That was my first experience as a killer of men, and although it was long distance and impersonal, I still had a hard time getting a decent night's sleep for many months unless I was plumb exhausted. I didn't even know how many men I might have killed. We had 4-man crews, but I didn't know if the Iraqis did the same. Nor did I really want to know. 2 times 3 or 4 men. 1.5 times 3 or 4 men. Either way, they were still dead and I had pulled the trigger. Sobering shit, but I guess every soldier has to feel that. None of that bothered Skip, Jubal, or Pete. Like I said, they were mountain people and came from a long tradition of violence and killing. The Hatfields and the McCoys had nothing on their families up in the hills of West Virginia. And if there weren't blood feuds, there were government revenue agents to harass and rough up. There were many revenuers who had to be retired with crippling injuries. With that kind of background, my crewmen, particularly Skip and Pete, were hard-assed men. I was a soft city boy compared to them. Jubal was just Jubal. Not too long after that, our unit was at the tail end of the big Marine armored push to Baghdad, the one that got bogged down by sandstorms. I killed my next man during that nasty time. In late March 2003, my loader Pete and I got sent up topside as lookouts as we sat waiting for orders to start moving again, which we knew damned well weren't gonna come during that sandstorm. We were almost totally blinded by the sand, and our electronic sights were just as bad as our eyes. Our goggles protected our eyes, and we had infrared night vision capability, but we were still blind-ass lookouts. The sand. We heard a noise on Pete's side, and he climbed down the side of the tank to go looking around. I couldn't barely see him as he moved a few feet away. Then I couldn't see anything. Pete had a headset in his helmet, like me, and he whispered to me, telling me what he was doing as he looked around. Well, felt around was more like it, I guess. He said he was checking along the side, and then around the back. Then he was silent. I had no way of knowing where he had gotten to. I heard 3 shots from Pete's weapon. Very distinctive sounds, our carbines versus their Kalashnikovs. Still no clue where the shots were, front or back or either side. The sandstorm just muffled everything down. Then I saw a dim form coming up, climbing the treads on the left side. The outline was dim, but it was wearing a helmet. It looked like Pete, but there was something not quite right. To this day I can't tell you what. There was no point in saying anything in the helmet comm, because the guy was 5 feet from me. I went on my gut instinct and I shot him. The man dropped out of sight with a cry. Then Pete was scrambling up beside me, asking what I was shooting at. I breathed a quick prayer of thanks to whoever. He said that in the slightly of the tank. He'd seen some men trying to get near us with something, probably explosives, and he had pegged a few shots at them. They took off into the murky nothingness surrounding us. The sandstorm led up toward morning, and we climbed out to look around. There was a dead guy, an Iraqi Republican Guard soldier, I think. He was half buried in the sand. I got him right through the forehead, just below his helmet. He was carrying some kind of improvised shaped charge. I'd been on the Harlan police for 9 years and had never shot at anyone, much less killed anyone, so I felt kind of strange about it for a while. It was different from shooting long distance at the tanks. I talked to Skip about it, everything I saw and heard and thought. He said he understood, but I doubted it. Pete was a tad shaken when I told him I thought I might have been shooting him, but he said I had done right, and Skip backed him up. Like I said, hard-assed men. Pete said that guy wasn't climbing up our tank to give us no big sloppy welcoming kiss. Funny thing is, I never saw an enemy soldier wearing a helmet like that after that. As the tank commander, Skip put me in for a medal, but nothing ever came of it. I figure I was 50-50 away from being court-martialed for shooting Pete. All that worked at that moment had been my gut feeling. That was not much to have to go on with a man's life at stake. Tank units were very much in demand for the next 6 months, and I saw a lot of the area around Baghdad without ever getting into the city itself. We spent a lot of that time poking around the province of Tikrit, Saddam's old home grounds. He had escaped from Baghdad near the end run at the city and was hiding someplace, him and his sons and a bunch of his senior staffers. They gave us a deck of cards, like playing cards, only they had the photos of the escapees, some 55 of them. We were supposed to be on the lookout for them, as if they were going to walk up to the tank. We were always on the move, and it was rare that mail caught up to us for weeks. Not that it meant much for me. Whatever came, there was nothing for me. Like I said, my folks were not much for letter writing. When some delayed mail caught up with us in late October, I did finally have 2 letters, one from Emma and one from Elise. They were barely a half-page each. I learned that Emma had given birth to a healthy baby boy named Dan Jr. a few weeks before. But there was none of that vital statistics info that women always like to give: length, weight, hair color, etc. Like I said, there had been no mail before that. The troops living in Baghdad or at many of the big bases had access to email and satellite phones, but not us raiders. Hell, if I had known anything about the pregnancy, I would have made a request to go to a phone center. But nobody thought to write and tell me. I was in the dark all through this. No one had even tried to call me. If they had, I'd have gotten the word. That was SOP for units spending extended time in the field. After the 2 letters, I asked for a break to make a humanitarian call. The chaplain fixed me up, and I called back home. I got Elise. Emma was not feeling well and was sleeping, she told me. Rough delivery, she said. She was there helping out with Dan Jr. I asked, Mom, how come nobody told me Emma was expecting? They'd have gotten a message to me for that. Oh, well, we knew you were busy, and there's always the chance that something might go wrong with a first pregnancy. We figured you didn't need anything else to worry about over there, what with you in a shooting war and all. But there weren't any complications and everything is fine. Well, okay, I said. So what does he look like? Weight, size, hair, eyes? I could use a picture, or something, when you get a chance. There was a pause. Then Elise said, Sorry, Danny, I gotta go. I hear the baby. Then she hung up. I was left looking at the phone in disbelief. There was a line behind me, so I had to move away from the little cubicle to give someone else a chance. I got back on the end of the line and tried to call back later, but the operator said that the phone wasn't being answered. And I was thinking, rough pregnancy? But there were no complications? Huh. The fighting entered a new phase after that. There were demands that the troops go house to house in and around Tikrit looking for Saddam Hussein and his sons. There was an increased emphasis on locating and capturing them. They were all considered war criminals. Meanwhile, my unit was busy fending off attackers. Now they were armed with rocket-propelled grenades, RPGs, which can do damage to a tank if you hit it right, and I had to put it out of my mind. The fighters, or insurgents as they were starting to be called, were fighting back now. We didn't exactly know who they were, but they were tough and getting bolder now that the big sweeping invasion was over. There was little chance to call or email, and there were no more letters. There was an ugly rumor of an announcement coming down from Rumsfeld. When it came, my unit was among many extended another 3 months to a 15-month deployment. Now I was going nuts. I wrote a long letter in November and asked for more news of my baby and Emma. The response didn't come back until early December. One letter from Clay. It was short and mostly local gossip and trivial stuff, but did not answer any of my questions. Now I was really baffled and getting pissed too. I wrote my sister, Diane, but got no reply for over a month. No written contact of any kind around Christmas. I got presents, but no notes or letters. This was getting too strange. In late January, I got a short note from Emma that vaguely mentioned some health problems that she had been having, and that she was much better now. I was getting ticked off. Health problems? And no one had stopped to tell me about that? Hell, I could have gotten sent home on humanitarian leave. I told them about that when I'd shipped out. And still nothing about the hair and eye color and other stuff that I'd asked for earlier. In February, I got called down to a Red Cross call center for an incoming satellite phone call from Elise and Clay. After the usual greetings, I asked them point blank about hair and eye color. Finally, Elise said that Danny Jr.'s hair was dark brown and that his eyes were also brown. Then she hastened to tell me that those things all can change as the baby grows up. What? I'm blonde and blue-eyed, and so is Emma. I just blurted it out. How can our baby have that coloring? As if rehearsed, Elise launched into a confused story about genes and suppressor genes and mitigating factors. I think she was reading it from something. She ended by saying that Reverend Willis reminds us that all that genetic stuff can always be overruled by the hand of God. I said never mind what the Reverend Willis said. What did the OBGYN doctor say about it? Elise and Clay hemmed and hawed and didn't answer, pleading that they had to give up the phone now to others. They hung up before I could protest. I reserved a time for a call back to the States. 2 hours later it was my turn, and so I called all their numbers, one after another. No one answered. I got information and called the OBGYN's office. I got a recording. I was still in my block of time. At last I got hold of Reverend Willis. He gave me pretty much the same spiel I'd heard from Corinne. He ended with, all things are possible through God. If he hadn't been a clergyman, I'd have shouted bullshit at him. I slammed the phone down so hard I almost broke it. I got a lot of dirty looks from the guys waiting to use the phone, but I didn't care. Then things got real interesting with the new wave of insurgency attacks, and I couldn't get time to call anyone else. I desperately needed to talk to my sister. She had been silent though all this. No letters, no calls. I tried her by satellite phone once, and her phone just rang and rang. I learned my unit was scheduled to be rotated back stateside in April. Well, I thought, when I get back to Harlan, I'll get some damned answers. Or some confirmation of what I pretty much thought I already knew. In late February, my tank and crew was assigned to the security detail for a visiting congressman from WVA, Keith Grant, and a cable network news team covering the visit. I figured that was because my unit was all West Virginia boys. My tank trailed the cavalcade, and when the visitors stopped at various points for the usual dog and pony show, my job was to jump down with my rifle and act as part of the security cordon. Pete and Jubal backed me up, while Skip stayed with the tank. We had all gotten briefed on what to expect and what to look out for. The visit went along pretty normal, for a while. I got to meet Congressman Grant myself, and he was an easy guy to talk to. They stopped here and there and met the local big shots and got lots of photo opportunities. Photo ops, they called them. The camera crew filmed everything. Or taped it. I'm not sure which. That was all pretty much the same thing now. Then hell started to break loose. We were in a town called Cargill. There was an incident that turned out to be a diversionary tactic, and the congressman and the cable news team were physically separated from most of the cordon by a wayward van that came bucketing out of a side street. Pete, Jubal, and I were standing right behind the congressman when the van appeared, and so we were isolated with them. I spotted 4 men rushing out toward us from behind the van. They had handguns, and they were shooting. I bellowed out for everyone to get down and for Pete and Jubal to get in front of the visitors. Then I moved out between the 4 crazy a-holes and my people. They were going to have to go though me to get to them. I stood steady as they came at me. It was like during the sandstorm. Fast decisions. I was surprised how calm I felt. I glanced back real quick and saw Pete and Jubal throw themselves over the congressman and the cable network correspondent, but the camera crew kept right on filming. I felt 2 bullets hit me on my body armor, but it did its job and I was okay. They rocked me a little, but I stayed ready. I ignored the impacts, took a breath, and released it slowly as I fired at the first 3 attackers with a trio of bursts from my weapon. They went down, 1, 2, 3. The 4th was on me then, and was frantically trying to get past me. The attacker clearly had explosives on a harness around his body, and was the only one of the 4 like that. There was wire and stuff wrapped around it. We had been briefed on that. It was designed to scatter a lot of deadly shrapnel to kill or maim anyone within range. I could have shot him or knocked him down, even close up, but that would have put the explosion within 10 to 12 feet of the crouching visitors, way too close. The explosion would be lethal. When picked for the detail, we'd been briefed that these suicide bombs sometimes had a position-sensing fuse, safe if the man was upright, but if he fell to the ground, the detonator would go off. So I had to keep him upright and get him away. So I charged the a-hole and threw my body into him. I stopped him dead in his tracks. My weapon was useless in this close-in struggle since I couldn't shoot him or use it to knock the a-hole down. I tossed it aside and went hand to hand. His clothes were too loose to get a good grip, so I grabbed onto the explosive-filled tubes and used them for leverage. The wires and sharp metal cut my hands, even though my gloves. What worked for me was that the man was harnessed tightly to the bombs. Push the bombs and the crazy a-hole went too. I drove him back away from the visitors, step by step. As the man scrabbled with his hands to get at the cord to ignite the detonators, I punched and blocked his hands. I was mostly pushing and driving the man away from his goal with my chest and shoulders. He was about my size, but I could outmuscle him. But he was trying with every bit of his strength. When I got the a-hole about 15 or 20 feet further away, I got a good grip on the tubes, lowered my shoulders, and threw my body into him, like hitting a blocking sled in football. He lost more ground. Finally, I got a really good grip on the harness, whirled him around in a circle, and flung him away from me by main force. The a-hole reeled, spinning away, unable to get his footing. That brought him up against a freestanding wall. The impact stunned him, and he began to slide down. I thought, oh, position-sensitive switch. So I turned and hauled my ass back toward the others. The explosives went off, and everyone in the area was bound to get hit with fragments, but at that distance they would maybe be just minor fragments. I had done my best. I was staring straight at the face of the cable network correspondent where she was peeking around Jubal's arm, and I saw something ding her headset. She flinched but kept on talking. Then something hit my legs and knocked me forward on my face. The last thing I remembered was thinking about her. Damn, she's a looker. I came to in a hospital with a great deal of pain in my legs, mainly the lower left leg, but with a lot of other general pains in my hips and torso. Hell, my hands hurt too. Hell, damn near everything hurt. They had me lying on my front instead of my back like a regular patient. My head was toward the door, instead of my feet like a regular patient. There was a lot of commotion when someone noticed I'd come to. Soon Representative Keith Grant was beside me in the room, kneeling down to see my face and carefully shaking my hand in a combination of genuine feelings and a hell of a photo op. He had a big gauze pad on his ear and another on his neck. From the fragments, I guess. Representative Grant thanked me for my heroic actions and said he expected to see me when I got to Walter Reed Army Hospital in Washington. Sure, no problem, I said. What's wrong with me? Then the Looker Cable Network correspondent was there, too. The way I was positioned, she had to crouch down to get her microphone in my face and ask a lot of questions. She wore a short skirt and had very nice legs, I noticed. Nice black thong, too. I noticed that. I think she noticed that I noticed, because she looked down and blushed and knelt down. She had a small medical dressing on her brow. How do you feel? She asked. Like crap. Why am I facing down? Did you deliberately risk yourself to protect us? When you were right next to the bomber and grabbed him, the bomb would have killed you right then? I don't know about risking myself. I had to stop him from getting to you people. I was assigned to protect you, so I had to stop him, and then I had to get him away from you. It was just like West Virginia high school football. I just treated him like a guy I had to block and drive out of a hole. What happened to me? Then the doctors and nurses pushed the looker away and were putting meds into my foredrip. She was shouting questions at me from some few feet away, still on her knees. Do you know the extent of your injuries? No, I called back. That's why I keep asking. No one's told me a damn thing. I don't like lying like this. It hurts like hell to have to hold my head up to talk to you. I got her to look me squarely in the eye. If they tell you what's wrong with me, will you tell me? I never got to hear her answer because I don't remember anything more. They must have had some damn good meds going into that for. When I came to the next time, it was nighttime. The doctor who was treating me came and sat on a low stool so I could see him without raising my head. He said that I had taken a lot of fragments from the bomb in my backside and all down the back of my legs. That was where my body armor didn't cover. That was why I was lying face down, so they could get to the wounds and pick out the shrapnel. Once they got out all the significant ones and the wounds were treated, he said they'd put me into a bed that would let me rotate back up to a normal reclining position. Oh, and I did take a few fragments in the back of my neck, but they were all out now. He said that over time, maybe a couple of months, the smaller pieces would make their way out. My body would seal them in little pouches of tissue to keep them from doing any more harm. He said my hands were pretty chewed up from grabbing all that sharp, nasty stuff wrapped around the explosives, but that was all healing up well. I said okay, but I was waiting for some bottom line news. I wasn't disappointed. The doctor scooted the stool closer. That was the first time that I noticed his rank. He was a full bird colonel, Corporal Walker. When the bomb went off, a large piece of the wall was blasted up and out and hit you on the back of your lower left leg. Essentially, it crushed your lower leg and foot. The tibia and fibula and dozens of small bones in your ankle and foot were almost completely shattered and crushed. There was no way to save any of it and no hope of rebuilding it. So we removed it, just below the knee. I looked up at him, ignoring the pain in my neck. So what do I do from here, Doc? I'm missing part of my leg? Doc, I'm a police officer back home. I can't be that anymore if I'm disabled. I'm not going to bullshit you, Corporal Walker. He went on. After you get acclimated to your prosthesis, you'll be able to walk pretty well, play golf, even dance and run road races if you're so inclined. That's pretty close to a normal life for most men. But no, you will be somewhat disabled for more vigorous activities. You probably won't be able to pass the physical requirements for many public safety jobs, like firemen or policemen. I'm telling you the brutal truth. Here, soldier. It's a piss-poor reward for serving your country and saving some people's lives. But life isn't always fair. But I think you'll be able to bounce back and go on from this. The man I saw on that video is too brave and tough to let something like this take him down. Video? You don't know? No one's told you? I tried to shrug my shoulders, but my neck told me that was a really bad idea. Muttering to himself, the doctor got up and went out for a few minutes. By the time the pain subsided, he came back in with an orderly and they hooked up something to the TV. At least that's what I thought they did. I could barely see past the doctor's belt when he stood up. The TV was up about 6 feet higher. The colonel clicked a remote and I heard the looker's voice narrating. Excuse me, sir, but I can't see a thing. At that, the colonel, the orderly, and a couple of nurses fell all over themselves, excusing themselves as they fought for access to some controls below the side of the bed. The Colonel one, and the bed slowly tilted up to where I could almost see the monitor. But as it tilted, the pain got so bad I could hear my vital sign beep EPS accelerate and those monitor alarms went off, so he had to crank me back down. Now I could understand why they had me tilted forward and down like that. Eventually they put a mirror down on the floor and tilted it so I could see the screen. That was the first time I saw my so-called heroics. It wouldn't be the last, and I soon got very tired of seeing myself do that stuff over and over. I got hit by the bullets. I shot the 3 assassins. I crashed into the 4th assassin and grabbed him and pushed him away by brute force. The looker's voice pointed out that from the time that I closed with him, I was the only one certain to share his fate if the explosives went off. Hell, that wasn't true, I thought. That close, they'd have all been toast. Maybe nobody wanted them to know. Then I swung him around and threw him at the wall. Actually, that was the only part one liked. The a-hole was about my size, but I still flung him a damned impressive distance, even if I do say so myself. It would have definitely gotten me an unsportsmanlike conduct and automatic ejection from a football game back in high school. I knew that because I'd done about the exact same thing in a game, once to a hotshot quarterback and had gotten ejected. Hell, I got suspended for the next 2 games. Up till now, that was probably my greatest claim to fame. And that was strictly local. And the coach had busted my butt in practice for those 2 weeks. On the rest of the video, I got to see what happened after the a-hole hit the wall and went down. The explosion was pretty damned impressive, and the picture got blurry for a few seconds. The cameraman shaken by the blast, I guess. I did see the chunk of wall hit me and felt I was damned lucky to have survived. It was as big as a chimney. It would have crushed my skull or broken my back if it had a little more loft. Like I said, I was damned lucky to have survived. I saw myself lying face down. It got all jiggly blurry as the cameraman jogged closer. I saw my buddies ran by the camera to get to me. Then I was looking down at myself. That was weird. I could see a lot of blood under the parts of my legs that didn't have wall on them. Then I saw the good-looking cable network correspondent again. She had one of those odd MTV-type names, Shannon O'Connor. Ms. O'Connor was doing a stand-up at the scene describing what had happened. She and the congressman were all over themselves talking over how brave and self-sacrificing I had been, etc., etc. I thought it was a bit much. On the end of the video, Congressman Sully turned the interview back to the purpose of his visit, and I lost interest in the rest of it. Colonel Sanders, I am not making this up. Talk to me some more about my treatment. He kept emphasizing that I would be returning home with a pretty good prognosis. Thinking about returning home brought my mind back to those questions I had about the brown-haired, brown-eyed baby boy awaiting me at home. I asked him if he could give me his medical opinion about something unrelated to me lying here in this bed. He said sure. So I told him the deal. 2 blue-eyed, blonde-haired parents have a brown-haired, brown-eyed baby boy. What were the odds? Colonel Sanders looked surprised, and then a little grim, but said he'd like to do some research before giving me his opinion. Then he gave the nurses some instructions and left me to try to sleep. Well, with the meds they were giving me, I had no problem doing that, no matter what I was worrying about. A couple of days later, he gave me his informed opinion on the likelihood. It was about what I figured. I thanked him. A couple of days after that, I got a frantic phone call from the whole family. They had never been contacted about my injury through any official channels. The first they knew was anything was from watching a network special about the congressional delegation to Baghdad. Not that they caught the special themselves, but a friend had TiVoed it and told them about it. So they trooped over and watched it. Apparently Shannon O'Connor had sat on the ambush video while she put together a piece about the trip, prominently featuring her coverage. She saved the video for last, and it lit up the network switchboard with excited callers. When she said that the name of the tank gunner who'd nearly been killed protecting her and Congressman Sully was Danny Walker of Harlan WVA, my folks had freaked out. They went nuts trying to figure out how to get to me. At last my sister called up the network and got a message through to Ms. O'Connor. When Shannon learned she had Corporal Walker's family on her plate, she called them back and did a telephone interview and finally told them what she knew. Someone dug up a number for Colonel Sanders for her. She gave it to them, and he gave them my room extension number. He came to my room just before they called. It was a strange conversation. They were all happy about my survival and worried about my injury and so on and on. I gave them the answers I knew, and Colonel Sanders came in on the line and filled them in with his medical opinions about my wounds, and the rehab I'd have to go though, and all that. I say I gave them my answers, but I was pretty terse about it. It was a suspicious thing that they were all purposely babbling and taking the phone back and forth, because it prevented me from having any opportunity to talk directly to Emma. Colonel Sanders eventually told them I was badly in need of rest, and ended the call. Then he sat down with me, and we talked about what I was facing, and it had nothing to do with my lower left leg. The next day, I was wheeled out with 23 other wounded warriors and loaded on a huge transport bound for Germany. Once there, I settled into my recovery regime. There were exercises to strengthen my legs, which were weak from disuse, and other tortures to prepare me for using my prosthesis. There was one exercise where I sat on a bench and swung my legs, one at a time, like I was trying to kick something in front of me and above my shoulder. It hurt like hell to do it with my good right leg, especially after the 10th or 11th repetition. My bad left leg was the worst. It had been growing weak from disuse and putting little weight or stress on it. Plus, to do those exercises, I had to have a heavier steel prosthesis strapped on as a resistance weight. After 4 or 5 kicks that I could barely get above my belly button, I would cramp up in my abs. By the time I came to Walter Reed, I was up to 23 left leg kicks, almost shoulder high, but the cramping was still fierce. I was off pain meds by then. They had to know when I experienced pain and where it was and what it was like to be able to treat me. I kept on it. I had been taught the value of discipline by my dad, and I applied it to everything in my life, in his memory. I had much better access to phones and such. I called my sister, and she answered. I came straight out with my doubts about the baby. She tried to assure me that there was nothing wrong, except that Dan Jr. was a little bit behind the development curve. I said, gee, remind me, what was that date of birth again? She paused and said October 13th. I said, how about that? Exactly 9 months to the day after I left. I told her I was thinking it was a tad bit later than that. Diane didn't say anything for a few moments. Then very carefully she said, Danny, Emma is the best friend I have in the world beside you. She's like my sister. You are my brother, but she needed my help. No one knew what to say to you. I just couldn't rat out my best. I interrupted her. Tough when you have to make hard choices, sis. Emma obviously couldn't do it. Neither could you. I guess Elise and Clay are in on the joke too, right? What a laugh. Here I am off getting my butt all blown up, and there you all are having a good laugh over the poor sapcuck. That was a real word. I looked it up. Diane said, it's not a joke, Danny. No one's laughing at you. It's more of a tragedy. Emma made a mistake. It's a terrible mistake, and she feels terrible about being so weak. She came to us, crying and asking for our forgiveness and help. There was never a question about aborting the baby, even though if she'd done that you might never have known. It could have all been smoothed over. But a life is too precious to throw away. Dan Jr. is an innocent party. I cut her off with a bitter laugh. Right, Dan Jr. good name. Something else to make people laugh at me. Diane, you say no one is laughing at me. I say that's a load of crap. Somewhere there in Harlan is a guy who knows he screwed my sweet, loving, faithful wife after I was off to war. He's laughing every day. And if he's the kind of opportunistic prick that I think he is, he's bragged on it to his buddies. He knocked up Danny Walker's wife, Emma, and got away with it. So that's him and his buddies who are laughing. Then there's everyone at the doctor's office and the hospital. You think they can't count? I leave in January and the wife delivers. When? What's the real birthday? January 22nd. Okay, so it's your typical 12-month pregnancy. Pretty common. Huh? And then there's the neighbors? The people who you all work with? Everyone back on the force? And everyone else that all those people have told. Hell, I guess seeing that stupid video brought all the cuck jokes right back up into everyone's mind. Who's the guy? I asked. What? Come on, don't play dumb on me, Diane. Who was Emma screwing? Danny, I've asked Emma, but she won't tell me. It sounded to me like she was choosing her words carefully, like she was pretending that she didn't even have a clue. I let it go. They were all going to lie. Okay, I said, that's something else to put on my to-do list. Let's see. So far I have heal up, rehab, get prosthesis, learn how to walk, learn how to go up and down stairs, find out who screwed Emma, slaughter his balls, get a divorce, get a job. Yeah, that about covers it. Danny, no, you can't even think about some of that stuff. You're injured and crip. I mean disabled. The man is violent. I mean, whoever he is, he might be dangerous to take on, the way you are. And you have to give Emma another chance. She really truly loves you, Danny, despite what happened. She's so full of remorse, you can't believe it. Let her make it up to you. And besides, you know you have a job. It's the law. They have to hold jobs for servicemen. Diane, I'm missing part of my leg. I can't go chasing after bad guys anymore. I can't go back on the force. All they can do is give me a job dispatching or filing paperwork. And besides, I couldn't work someplace where every man and woman will be laughing at me behind my back. And how the hell does a cheating wife go about making it up to the man she cheated on? Well, You can't just get a divorce without giving Emma a chance. No matter what, she still loves you. You loved her before, and you must still love her. Love just doesn't go away when something bad happens. And think about that innocent little baby. Dan Jr., I know you can't believe it right now, but when you see that little guy, you will absolutely fall in love with him. He's just a precious baby. Diane, you must be smoking something. I have nothing against the little guy, except for his bullshit name, but you want to know what I'll see whenever I see him? I'll see Emma on her back in our bed while Mr. No Name is pounding her. That's what I'll see. I'm not bullshitting you. I probably won't be able to get completely over my former feelings for Emma for years and years from now, Diane, but I cannot and will not ever trust her. Never again. And I'm damn sure not going to stay married to someone who's cheated on me like she has. You people tried real hard to avoid my questions, but at last I'm starting to put it all together. Diane, I want you to tell Emma and the others exactly what I said, and how serious I am about it. Tell Emma what I said about what I'll think of when I see that baby. I don't want them, or you to call me after this. You and them were the only family I've got. Now Emma's betrayed me, and the rest of you've conspired against me. Tell them that I don't want to see them here in Germany, either. They fly family over here to be with their wounded people. I don't want that. I'll do everything I can to make certain that you all are kept away from me. Mere corporals don't usually have much clout, but I'll see if I can work this hero thing to give me enough for that. I hung up. January 22nd. Huh? Count 9 months back from that, and it's about when I was blowing up those 2 tanks. I'm killing my first men, and Emma's back home giving it up to some guy. That wasn't the end of it, though. Emma tried to call me several times, and I refused to talk to her. I couldn't stop the calls from going, though, to my phone, and there was no caller ID, but as soon as I heard her voice, I would just hang up. She didn't give up, though. I'll give her that. I had a visit from a very annoyed Major Wopat, the director of nursing. Corporal Walker, I am ordering you to talk to your poor wife when she calls. You may be a hero, but you are a miserable excuse for a human. The way you've been treating that poor woman. I told her to call again on the hour. You will take the call, and you will talk to her. That is a goddamned order. I looked past her and saw some very angry-looking women standing behind her. Apparently, I had all the nurses on the ward pissed off at me. Okay, I mean yes, sire. But I have a request, Major. I seem to have made a lot of enemies by wanting to talk to my wife. I want everyone here who thinks that I'm a callous male POSB here at the top of the hour to listen in on that call. I'd like to have it on the speakerphone so you can all hear both sides of it. Curiosity won that round, and there were at least a dozen or so women who immediately asked to be included. Better yet, Major Wopat fielded so many requests that she had my extension call forwarded to a small meeting room. They wheeled me down there at 1/4 to the hour. When the phone rang, Major Wopat picked it up and answered while putting it on the speaker. Yes, ma'am, Corporal Walker is right here. Emma's voice was full of righteous indignation. Danny, how dare you keep hanging up on me? I'm your wife. Now, look, honey, I'm so sorry. I know I made a bad mistake, but you have to believe me when I swear on my life that I've never stopped loving you. I moved closer to the speakerphone. I was pretty sure that Emma didn't know there were other listeners. Emma, I have some questions for you. I figured you would. I guess I owe you that, but you know there's one question I won't answer. First off, before you start grilling me, how is your leg? Well, the right one is fine and well. I can't speak for the left one because I don't know where some of it is. Now, the left stump is doing okay, they tell me. I crutch around for exercise, and when they're satisfied the stump is ready, they'll fit me with a titanium prosthesis and I'll start learning how to walk again unassisted. That'll put me way ahead of your little boy. Too bad. I guess you thought it might have been something that we might do together. You'll all be wanting us to bond. That'll be hard, seeing as how he isn't mine. There were some interesting facial expressions among the listeners. Please, Danny, I'm so sorry. I was so weak. I don't know what came over me, but it was just the one time, and I've never had anything to do with him since. Major Wopat had an unhappy look on her face. Okay, now I do have those questions. She interrupted me. Danny, when are you coming home? We all miss you so much. Harlan wants to feature you in a big parade. You're a hometown hero, for real. Everyone has seen how brave you were on that video. Emma, I don't know when they'll send me back to the States. It could be a few weeks or a few months. Then I won't be home, because I'll be in rehab and prosthesis training at Walter Reed until they're sure I'm ready to be discharged. They're discharging me from the Army all the way. I can't serve active or reserve with an artificial limb. As for the parade and all that crap, if that's for certain, I'm never coming home. I sure don't want to be the returning hero cuck on parade for everyone to laugh at. Didn't Diane tell you how I felt about how people will laugh at me? I like to think I'm thick-skinned, but I can't take that for the rest of my life. Any other questions? Emma said no, in a quiet voice. Okay then, my turn. First question. Were you assaulted? Because if you were assaulted, you can't hold back the name. He's a criminal, and he deserves to be arrested and tried. So, did he assault you? There was dead silence. Then, no, I wasn't assaulted. Okay then, who did you screw while I was away getting shot at in the war? Emma sputtered. I'm not going to answer that, Danny. I know Diane told you that. It was as much my fault as his. I don't dare tell you who it was. I know how you'd be. If you knew, you'd come home and go after him, and either you'd kill him and go to jail for life, or he'd kill you, and then he'd go to jail. Then who'd take care of his wife and kids? He's not all to blame. Okay, so, you screwed a married man with kids and you want to protect him. No, I want to protect both of you. So this must have been some stranger. A married man with kids who didn't know you were married. Some guy you went out and picked up when you weren't wearing your wedding ring. No, it wasn't like that. I would never take off my rings or go looking for a stranger. Oh, so it's not a stranger. He's from Harlan, and he knew very well you were married. So he probably knows me and him. And he deliberately made a run at a lonely married woman with her husband away fighting a war, and got her to go to bed with him. You're twisting everything to make it sound sordid and awful, Emma cried. Danny, listen, we had never been apart before for more than a day before you left. I missed you so terribly. And when the war started, I was frantic with worry about what might happen to you. I was depressed, and I was lonely. And after our farewell night, as the days dragged by, I was getting the other kind of lonely. I'm sure you must have felt the same way. I'm sure there must be temptations over there. I've heard that war makes people do things that they might otherwise not do. Emma, don't even try going there. We were fighting a real war with real bullets, and out in the boonies 24/7. We were pretty much trying to stay alive. The only desire I'll confess to having was for a hot shower once a week. And you weren't in a war zone, so that explanation won't wash. So did you put the moves on him, or did he do the dogging? No, neither one of us did. It wasn't like that. He knew I was feeling down whenever he saw me. We used to joke around all the time, him trying to cheer me up, and it was getting so I couldn't even smile. He walked me home a couple of times for company. I gave him a cup of coffee a few times to be neighborly and for the company. Then he took me out to a movie to get my mind off my worries. And, well, he was sitting with me watching TV one night, and it just happened. We both felt terrible when it was over. I was riddled with guilt. When he went off to work, we couldn't even look at each other. Hold on, there. He went to work from our house? Unless he works the midnight shift, that means he spent the whole night with you. Emma was silent. Then, I guess, yes. So what happened was that you were together with this no-name married guy that I probably know, and you were necking and petting and you screwed him on the couch. Then you went up with him to our bedroom and got undressed and went to bed together, and the two of you spent the night screwing. Knowing how you can get you when you get going, I can imagine that neither of you got much sleep. It was more like that, right? We could hear Emma crying. No, really, well, it just happened. And then I was in a kind of fog, and I don't know why it went on that way that night. But it was only that one night. Unprotected sex all night? No, of course not. He used protection. How could you be sure? Being all carried away by emotions and all that. Oh, I made sure. I helped him put. Okay, Emma, now you've cleared that all up. Now, again. Which of my friends or neighbors or fellow cops was it? No, I told you I won't tell you that. Okay, how about this? How many times did you do it that night? I'm not going to answer any of that. You're just lashing out to try to hurt me because I hurt you. And I did hurt you, Danny. I know that. And I would do anything to undo what I've done. But I can't. All I can do is beg your forgiveness. We can get through this. We can get counseling. Danny, please. I love you. I know you don't believe that, but I do. I always have, even, well, always. When you get home, I'll do anything and everything to make it up to you. I said, Emma, after that one time, after he did you all night and left and went to work, did you ever screw him or do anything sexual with him another time? Yes or no? Pause. No. Okay, good. Have you had any communication with Mr. No Name after that one and only time? I don't mean passing in the street and nodding or saying hello. I mean, have you had a conversation with him in person or on the phone or by email or IM or anything? There was another brief pause. No. Okay, that's it for now, I guess. Now listen very carefully, Emma. I've given you your call. I hate what you've told me, and I hate even more what you've refused to tell me. You told me that you only did it with that one guy that one night's worth, and that he used rubbers, but that you got pregnant. My guess is that he's the kind of a-hole who uses pierced rubbers to fool his 304s into thinking she's protected. And I don't think it was just that one time, no matter what you say. So, I'm putting the embargo back on. I won't take any more phone calls from any of you, at least until I'm back in the States and done with all this army and medical stuff. Don't try to visit me, either. I'm just so totally pissed that the only 4 people in the world that I loved and trusted completely have gone so far to deceive me. Right now, when I really could use a little support and love, I don't have a single goddamn person I can trust. I have a lot of thinking to do and a lot to think about. I'm also going to be looking for those answers that you wouldn't give me. Goodbye, Emma. Wait, Danny, wait. Please, I need to be able to see you and talk to you. You can't. I cut off the line. I looked at the people who'd listened in and asked, any questions? No, Corporal, Major Wopat said. I'm sorry that we intruded. Later on, one of the nurses who had listened in was assigned to my night shift coverage. She brought me my meds, then lingered. Corporal Walker? Not for very long, Lieutenant. They're gonna discharge me as disabled. For now, why don't you just call me Danny? Okay, Danny. Call me Nancy. I have to apologize for butting in and listening to your problems with your wife. I'm sorry for eavesdropping, and I'm also sorry about your situation. I watched the video again today, with some of the girls who hadn't seen it. Jessie Wopat sat in, too. She said she had called you out as some kind of lowlife before she knew why you were blowing off your wife's calls. That she put down your heroism. I'd just like you to know that none of us, including Jessie, think that way. We all think you're the bravest man we've ever. She was crying. I reached out to pat her shoulder in a clumsy attempt at consolation. I'm sorry. I know that all the wounded boys are brave, but we can never know what they really did, do you see? So we get callous and businesslike. With you, we can see what you did. It was just, we all cry when the camera comes over to you, and we can see your legs covered up by that stone and all that blood. Emma must be 10 kinds of a fool to risk losing a man like you. I said, Nancy, I'm just like all the other guys. Any of them, anyone in my unit would have done the same. All due respect, Danny, but that's bullshit, she said. The veteran combat guys say it's a damned fine thing that you did. So don't you be putting it down. Whether you like it or not, you're a real live genuine hero. Then she leaned over and kissed me on the cheek. You take care of yourself, Danny Walker. I'll be praying for you. My hero. Now, at night, I had a lot of time to think. Between pain and my mind in turmoil, sleep came hard. Thing was, I didn't believe Emma for a minute. I thought that she and Mr. No Name did get together more than that one night. Hell, my farewell lovemaking didn't hold her more than a month or so. I wasn't sure. That meant I thought that they did communicate. Well, as a one-time wannabe detective, I went into detecting mode. The question was, how open would she have been about it? The local phone service records wouldn't show anything, but that left the cell phone. I gave her a cell phone on a calling plan as an engagement gift, and she had become so accustomed to it that she used it in preference to the landline phone. I booked some more calling time during what would be normal business hours back home. I called my cell phone provider. It took quite a bit of time and patience to wade through all the automated menu crap, but I finally got through to someone named Estelle. Then I spoke to Estelle's supervisor, who spoke with an Indian accent. It wasn't easy, but I finally got them convinced that I was the guy who owned the contract on the service and who paid the bills out of a monthly bill payer account from a Harlan bank. They arranged to send me copies of the phone records from right after I left until the most recent bill. The cell phone records would show the number of every incoming and outgoing call. Starting in mid-February 2003, one number appeared and was repeated. It was from Warren Fletcher, another Harlan cop. The records showed that Emma had kept calling and taking calls from Warren right up to when the video story broke. Now that I knew the man who cucked me was a cop, I had some other things I could do. I hadn't run into him much, but he was a big, intimidating guy with movie star good looks. I'd heard that he played around a lot, especially with married women, but I had to wait a while for my next move. Because right then my time in Germany was up, and they flew me back to the States and I was installed at Walter Reed Medical Center. I've read since then that there were many legitimate complaints about the care and aftercare at Walter Reed for the military wounded. I never saw that, partly, I suspect because I was somehow tagged as a person of special interest to an influential lawmaker, Keith Grant. Once I got installed and enrolled in the programs, I called my old mentor on the Harlan PD. Carl Winters had been my late father's best friend and police partner. He was retired from service now, but he still lived in Harlan. Carl still hung around in the cop bars and had a lot of contacts on the force. I called him and explained the situation and what I had discovered and surmised so far. Turned out that Carl had heard some cop talk rumors about Warren and Emma, but had kept a lid on it. He expressed his regrets about it, of course. He said he'd snoop around and would report back to me. He called a week later. He'd been a pretty good detective, and he hadn't lost much of his skill. He nosed his way in among a few cops who definitely weren't Warren's buddies. One of them was a former bud who suspected that Warren had tapped his wife. That guy was eager to get something going against Warren, but had never had more than suspicions. According to him, Warren had been bragging about bagging Emma on a regular basis, even naming her. People had seen his car parked there overnight, sometimes over many months. Carl said Warren definitely had something going with Emma for about a year after I had gone off, but she had cut him off when the video stuff came out. Of course, none of the cops would rat out Warren officially. You'd have thought it'd be a toss-up where their loyalties would lie. It was between two fellow officers, but they saw Warren every day, and he was a big, mean man, not someone you like to have as an enemy. I was off their radar. It was cold, but that's what it was. I also learned that the Army was reluctant to have to extend the tours anymore. It got terrible press and public reaction the previous time. Now they were quietly offering inducements to guys and units that would voluntarily stay on for a few more months. They would be trainers, and not in combat. The war was going on longer than anyone had planned for, and it was taking time to get stateside units up and ready to deploy. I heard that Pete and the skipper and Jubal had volunteered for more time. Even hellraisers like those boys were sick of combat by then. They would mostly be in Kuwait training replacement crews. There was to be a medal ceremony at Walter Reed for the Silver Star. Oh yeah, it had been bumped up from bronze. The original determination was based on my only killing 4 insurgents. But after some pressure from Keith Grant and the cable network, and a few tons of mail by people who had seen the video, they decided to make it silver instead of bronze. I also heard they took into consideration my tank kills and the attacker I killed in the sandstorm. There were also going to be awards for Pete and Jubal for their part in protecting the visitors during the attack. Representative Grant and his wife, Maria, worked on me to let my family come down for the award. They were his constituents too, he argued. Well, not really. He was from the next district over, but he was thinking in statewide terms, even then. So they would ostensibly be there as his guests, not mine. I finally gave in but said I didn't want to meet with them until after the ceremony. Then, I wanted a private place to deal with them. Representative Grant, his wife Maria, their 23-year-old daughter Nina, and Shannon O. Casey were there, the last with her video crew. The family had left Dan Jr. home. That was at my insistence, and I told Keith Grant that it was a deal breaker. If they brought the baby, I was not going to be there. Walter Reed is a big place, and with crutches I was ambulatory enough to hide out. At the awards ceremony, I wasn't steady enough yet to stand unassisted for a long time, so I had to use elbow crutches. I wished I'd worked harder with the prosthesis, but the techs and nurses said I was working as hard as possible. I hated to be seen looking like I was milking being disabled. Casey and her cameraman said they'd work the shooting angles and edit the tape to minimize the crutches. Besides, she said, you got your wounds doing what you're getting the medal for. They're damned honorable wounds. Trust me, it deserves to be shown. Then she reached out and touched my left leg, the living part. It wasn't a pat. It was more like a caress. We were off to the side, and it seemed like no one was looking at us. She leaned closer. You deserve a hell of a lot more than a silver star for it, she said, very softly into my ear. My hero. You think I don't wake up every day thanking you for saving my life, Danny? You think my mother and her friends aren't making novenas for your recovery? I told her I'd bring her to meet you someday so that she can thank you herself for saving her daughter. Then she turned my head around in her hands and kissed me. No, I don't mean that she just kissed me. She kissed me. A knee buckler. Emma had been a pretty passionate kisser. Shannon made Emma seem like a beginner. Then she walked away to say something to her producer. What the hell was that all about? It was unbelievably intimate. I was feeling some stirrings where I hadn't stirred in several months. I looked around quickly. I'd said that no one was looking at us, but I was wrong. Both Maria and Nina Grant were intent on me. Then Nina turned and said something to her mother, who laughed, and then looked thoughtfully at me as I gimped back to the platform. The ceremony went okay. They read the commendation, and then, of course, they had to show the video again. I got my medal and a unit citation for the tank kills and my Purple Heart. Afterward, one of the representative's aides led us all to a small room off the auditorium. I had no objection to Keith Grant, Maria, and Nina sitting in, although I kicked Shannon and her cameraman out. Bad enough that my entire hometown knew the scandal, not to mention my congressional representative's family. I did not want it to get on a cable news network. Shannon pleaded that she would keep it strictly off the record. She said she was just a very concerned friend. I said no and told her to behave. She gave me a very smoldering last look before she left. So Elise, Clay, Diane, and Emma sat and waited for me to speak. I told them I wasn't happy about what I had to say, but that it was time to cut through all the lies and bullshit. I told them about the phone records. It was clear to me that Warren Fletcher was the father. Emma, despite what you told me on the phone, you did keep talking with Warren continuously from just a few weeks after I left, through the time you admitted you had the affair, and right along up to the time that the video was released. That was over a year. So you lied to me about that, and I believe you also lied about continuing to have sex with him. I know Warren by reputation, and he is a sex hound. If he got into you once, he'd keep on getting into you, or have nothing to do with you. I've had reports from people who saw his car at our house, sometimes overnight during that period when you and he were calling each other. So it wasn't just that one time, and you didn't stop until the video hit. Must have taken some of the fun out of it, huh? I looked at Clay and Elise. I can't know whether you knew it was going on all that time, but Warren sure wasn't keeping a low profile. How could you not have known? You're over there or by the house all the time. Didn't you ever see his car? It's an HPD cruiser parked there overnight. I know that you knew that she wasn't carrying my child, and you should have been able to figure out who the real father was. You too, Diane. They're Emma's kin, and I can see them trying to protect her. But you're my family, yet you went right along with it. I don't want to hear about how she's your best friend. I'm your brother. So get this loud and clear. It's all over. There will be no reconciliation. I'm filing for divorce sometime next week, and I will not pay any child support or alimony. Hell, Emma has a job, and I'm going to be kicked off the Army payroll someday soon. You can go after Warren for the child support. I have nothing against little Dan Jr., except for his name, which is a mock at my situation. But he isn't mine. I figure that Warren will deny everything. The affair and his paternity. I don't know if a court can force him to get a DNA test, but I'll work on that. Or some other proof of that. But in the meantime, you folks are used to working together. You did it to deceive me. Work on that. Do what you can. I will file for divorce. I'll make my grounds something neutral like irreconcilable differences. Do not even think of fighting me on it, or I'll change them to adultery. After they left, I was pretty drained. I'd been rehearsing that unpleasant speech for weeks, and it had near killed me to say it out. I was effectively divorcing myself from every person in the world that I called family. The legal divorce would be just a formality. I had never felt so tired and sad and alone. And the people who stepped up to the plate right after that drama were Maria and Keith Grant and their daughter Nina. They offered their friendship and their sympathy. Maria put her arms around me. I had thought I had just about cried myself out during some of those times in the hospital between the pain from the wounds and the other kind of pain from forcing my body through rehab. And now there was the third kind, the profound emotional pain of losing everything and everyone I loved. I had lost the love of my life. No matter how false she had turned out to be, the pain was undiminished. And along with that was losing my family. I would never be able to think of Clay and Elise as my family anymore. Even Diane was lost to me. It was too much. I had not ever been much of a weeper, but I made up for it then. I simply gave in and let out the tears I had not shed over my wound or the pain, or any of the rest of my personal problems up to then. I blubbered out something about it not being very manly of me, but Maria was having none of that. Sure, Danny Walker. If there's any man in the world who's entitled to shed tears over his losses, it's you, she cooed. I appreciated that Keith and Nina stayed out of it and let the matriarch do her thing. I wondered what Nina thought of a crying a-hole with a silver star pinned to his damp uniform. The Grants invited me to spend the weekend at their McLean home. I was easily persuaded. Now that I'd finally gotten all of the deception out in the open and behind him, I was feeling empty. I had nobody but these new people. I needed to be around people. I needed to reconnect to people. For the past couple of months, and during the period of nagging uncertainty before, the whole of my thinking was about the birth of the baby and what that meant. In 3 hospitals, I had been plagued by feelings of failure as a husband and as a man. My wife had cheated on me. Her family and my own sister had conspired to lie to me to try to make me think someone else's child was mine. I had no job to go back to, nor did I even want to go back to a town that knew I was a cuck. I was turning my back on Diane and the others. I felt diminished, crippled, alone, with no family and no job prospects. All I had was a couple of pretty pieces of metal and ribbon and an assortment of false lower left legs to show for my life so far. In that frame of mind, I embraced the kindness and hospitality of the Grants. I hoped there was something in their hospitality besides mere gratitude. I needed friendship. I needed someone to give a damn about Danny Walker. Yes, I had saved Keith's life in all likelihood, and Maria and Nina were grateful for that, beyond doubt. They loved their main man. And now, during my stay, I was their second main man, or so it seemed. Maria treated me like a mother. I'd little recollection of my own mother. Elise had done her best as a surrogate, but Elise was dead to me. Maria saw to my care and feeding and had a trainer come by during my stay to keep me at my rehab work, which was brutal. Oh, more repetitions of the dreaded kicks. And my prosthesis training, which wasn't as painful, physically, but was very discouraging for an active man accustomed to running and jumping like a trained athlete. Learning how to walk all over again when you were in your late 20s is neither easy nor fun. Keith was something between a father and a big brother. Saying he was long overdue for some fitness work himself, he worked out alongside me for hours. I appreciated his company, and it gave us a chance to talk. I learned a lot about all the things that go into the life of a congressman. Then, and in off hours, he talked about the life of a public servant and what it was like trying to represent so many conflicting interests as a congressman. I'm not a dummy, and I read a lot and have a lot of interests, but Washington and the workings of the government were not high on my list of interests. I was getting a first-class education, fast. One day, Keith's chief of staff, Jack Grayson, and his head of security, Seymour Cray, came by to discuss legislative matters and to meet me again. They had been there that day in Cargill when the four a-holes tried to kill everyone. It's kind of unnerving when you keep running into people who keep thanking you for saving their lives. We sat out by the pool. I had just been doing some walking in chest-high water with my waterproof prosthesis. Walking against the resistance of the water was tiring, but easier on me than pushing against weights. It was a change of pace. They spent a surprising amount of time talking to me. I thought they had come to talk business with Keith. That took less than half an hour. Then he sat listening as they pumped me, nicely, about my former job, my personal situation, my rehab, and of course, the incident where I saved their boss life and theirs. They insisted and created difficulties in mine. If I didn't know better, I would have thought they were interviewing me. They seemed very interested to learn that I was a few credits away from as in criminal justice from a WV community college. They asked if I had ever thought of getting a bachelor's degree. Sure, I said. I thought I'd go after one when I got back to working my job. There's lots of night courses taught at satellite campuses near Harlan. But now, you can understand why I don't much want to return back there. I guess the force would have to give me a job as a dispatcher or something, but that's not real police work. The point of getting a degree is to set you on the path toward detective. And what's the point of getting credentials for a job I can't do anymore? And there are a boatload of other reasons why I don't want to go back to Harlan. I looked at Keith, questioningly. He said, Danny, Jack and Cy are fully aware of your whole situation. They have to know everything about what I've got going on. Otherwise, they can't look out for me. I sighed. Oh well, I was getting used to people knowing the sordid details of my personal life. Even Nina knows everything. I found myself wondering what she thought of me. The last she saw of me except in passing, I was blubbering in her mom's arms. Keith broke into my reverie. Danny, Jack and Cy are here to assess you. I have a great opinion of you and your potential. They were concerned that I might be too subjective to really assess you. We have a proposition for you. A job offer. I looked at him and them. Beyond them I could see Maria, sitting on a lounge chair, watching us. And with her was Nina. I seem to have become a very interesting person lately. Oh, don't get your back up, Danny. It's not to show you off as my pet hero or as charity or any of that kind of crap. Jack and Cy here agree with my idea. Now they've met you. We want you on our team. On my staff. Right now they're fighting over who gets the bulk of your services. For starters, I'm on a subcommittee that deals with disability issues. I talk to groups and track legislation and investigate programs to see if they're delivering what they're funded for. You can bring a perspective that I lack. You're smart and a quick study, so it won't take you long to get up to speed on the issues. And not just the disability things. There are a lot of other issues I want you to learn in on for me. In the meantime, I want you with me to meet the people and listen. I want you to be with me to hear how I talk and deal with people. And eventually, I want you to be able to talk for me on your own. You're a proven good man under pressure. You have the authority of a cop, and you can get people to talk to you. I can use that to help me shape legislation. Cy wants to get you licensed to carry a weapon and join his security team in certain situations. We like to see you take some courses in public policy and political science to get you some credentials, but that's just our first assessment. You may want to do some other things, or we may get better ideas. Point is, we're offering you this job. Are you interested? I was speechless. I had been dreading hearing about some shallow phony PR thing, but this sounded real. Keith said, Look, Danny, we know this is coming out of left field. You still have your rehab to do, and a lot of loose ends back home. I know that. We know that. This job offer is open indefinitely. But I didn't want to go a day more without making the offer. You have a great deal of uncertainty in your life. I wanted to give you one thing you can stop worrying about. Think it over. Wow, things were definitely looking up. I looked over at Maria and Nina, and they gave me their 2 thumbs up. I seemed to have acquired some fans, and among them was Nina. For public consumption, she acted like a younger version of Maria. She was my friend, a listener if I wanted to talk, a buddy if I wanted company. However, I watched Maria watching Nina playing as my buddy, and she smirked at me as if she and I were in on some shared joke. I wished I knew what the joke was. That evening, Nina accosted me when I went in to shower before dinner. She wasn't much for the subtle approach. It looked to me like she was hell-bent on getting me alone. I'm no egotist, but she was pretty clear about it. She had set out to seduce me. That wasn't going to happen, but she was almost overwhelming. God, she was beautiful, intelligent, sexy, wickedly funny, and hot for me. And I couldn't think why. I felt I had to be blunt, now that she had again contrived to get me alone. Nina, I don't get it. Unless I'm completely misreading it, you're going after me. Why? I'm damaged goods, in every way possible. You sat in when I spelled out my betrayal by my wife and her family. And my own sister. I'm a disabled ex-cop with an uncertain future. Uncertain future, she laughed. I thought I heard you get a pretty good job offer a while ago. Anyway, Danny, she said, job or no job, you're what I want. You look awfully good to me. She was pushing close to me, expecting to be kissed, when Maria came upon us. She smiled at my embarrassment and asked me to do an errand that would take me out of her daughter's beautiful clutches. That shared joke? Later that night, Maria let me in on it. It was after dinner. Keith had gone off to a local minor league baseball game. He'd invited me, but I pleaded weariness, which was absolutely not faked. Between Maria's trainer's aggressive exercises and my own pool workouts, plus the bombshell that Keith and his guys had laid on me, I had quite enough for one day. Nina had announced that she was going off with a couple of girlfriends to catch a movie and have a girls' night out. Of course, I was trotted out and introduced to them. Rhonda and Joe were their names, and they were almost as beautiful as Nina herself. They were very pumped up to meet me, they said. As they walked out, and I watched their lovely behinds swaying, Rhonda turned around to see if I was watching, and said, Nina says that we might get dibs on you. What? I was turning that over when Maria came in the front door. She had been seeing the girls off. I heard that little minx, Rhonda, she said. She is so full of it. There's one thing I can assure you of. If Nina gets to you, there will be no dibs. Danny, we all know very well how you don't like to be ambushed. She smiled at her little joke. So I'm here to warn you. Nina is just crazy for you. She says she knows that you feel something for her. Oh, Danny, you have really done something to my girl. At first, she was just overwhelmed by it all. I mean the video that showed you saving Keith's life and those other people's lives too. Heck, everyone who sees it is. But back then you were remote, that hero, an abstraction, like a video game or an action figure. Then she saw you for the first time at that medal ceremony, and I could almost see you through her eyes. You were terribly pale and drawn. Your uniform almost hung off you. You came out with those crutches, but stood straight and tall. Oh my, Danny, you were a romantic hero, like something out of a book or a movie. Then we saw you talking to Shannon, and we saw her kiss you. You seemed surprised, and looked around. Nina turned to me and said, that bitch. I am afraid I'm falling in love with that man, Mother. He's brave, handsome, modest, and I swear when I look at him, he just makes my heart sing. I've never felt like this. He's a hot-looking guy, which sure doesn't hurt, but it's not just that. And now that I've met him, he's everything that Daddy said he was, and more. He's tough and smart, and has gone through hell without losing his dignity. She asked me what falling in love felt like for me and Keith. I said it couldn't be described, but that it was probably different for every pair of lovers. I turned and looked at you and laughed at her gushing. But then, as I said, I was seeing you with her eyes. I told her how I could understand her feelings. Danny, you cannot seem to understand how perfectly extraordinary you are, to a woman like Nina. Hell, to any woman. How many women can absolutely know that their man is capable of protecting them like that? What the whole world saw in that video. I also told her that I've already sounded out Shannon. I told her that if she wanted you in her bed and for more beyond, she had better make her move because Ms. O'Casey is taken with you too. If Shannon didn't have such a crazy schedule and had to be on the go all the time, she might have already gotten to you. I guess I must have looked gobsmacked at all this because Maria patted my cheek. I know it seems callous to be talking about you, as if you were a prize bull without having any choice in the matter, Danny. It's just the way some women talk, and the way they think. We can be very proprietary once we've staked out what we want. I've told her she was underestimating you. I told her that it didn't matter whether you were attracted to her or to Shannon, or to both for that matter. I said that you were an old-fashioned man, a man of honor. You were still married, and that I didn't think you would go along with a casual affair. I looked at her. And you were telling me all this flattering stuff because in addition to being the object of her interest, you are an even greater challenge now. She will try to seduce you because I told her that you were unseducible. Just a friendly warning, Danny. I know you hate surprises. Maria, can you get her to stop? I'm nowhere near ready for dealing with this. I can't say that I don't have feelings for Nina. Maybe I do, but I can't even think about that until I'm a free man. Tell her to stop? Have you been paying attention? Danny? Nina is 23. She's an adult and a grown-up woman, which I'm sure you've noticed. Anything I say to her is purely advisory. Nina will do what she wants. And we both know what she wants. Well, tell her I find her annoying. Or repulsive. Or wait, I know. Tell her I'm hot for Shannon. That would just increase the challenge. Nina is very competitive, in case you haven't noticed. As I said, just a friendly warning, Danny. Be prepared to repel boarders. And with that, Maria walked away. I sat down, remembering how tired I had been even before hearing all this about Nina and Shannon. The last thing I needed now was more women trouble. I needed to get some sleep and forget all these complications. But I drove myself to do a last workout. I took 2 walking laps on my prosthesis, all around the house grounds inside the perimeter wall, and finally went to my room. I was in the wing by the pool, a bit isolated from the rest of the house. I went to bed. The first I knew of Nina's presence was when she slid her body next to mine and kissed me. She smelled faintly of rum and her perfume. What? Nina? What are you doing? That should be obvious. Danny, darling, she whispered. I'm seducing you. No, you are damned well not. I croaked out. I scrambled to the edge of the bed and swung my legs over. Unfortunately, both the lamp and my prosthesis were on the other side, her side. Nina seemed surprised at my reaction. Hell, so was I. I wasn't at all immune to her charms, and I might just have been groggy enough to have succumbed. But fortunately, or unfortunately, I woke up fully alert. She came to her knees and walked over to me, throwing her arms around me. Darling, I'm sorry I startled you, she said, but I'm serious. I want very much to love you and be loved by you. Now, tonight, please. She was kissing my neck and shoulders, trying to get me to turn to her. God, how could I resist this woman? I steeled myself and said, Nina, you're a gorgeous, sexy woman, and if things were different, I'd be mad not to take you. But this is wrong. Wrong for you and very wrong for me. I'm a married man. My marriage may no be worth a shit, but it's there, and until I have a divorce, I'm stuck with my obsolete vows. Nina looked at me, at my expression. You are serious, she said. My God, the only honorable man left in the country, and I can't get him to make love to me. I feel so stupid. Maria was right about you. You are even better than I thought. I'm sorry, Danny. I feel like such a fool throwing myself at you. No, you're not a fool, Nina, I said. You're direct. You know what you want, and you go after it. But since it's me, I have to turn you down. And believe me, this is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Nina? I can't go anywhere, I said. She quickly looked at me. Why not? Having second thoughts, I hope? Second thoughts? Oh, God, do I have second thoughts. Believe me, just seeing you like that. I stopped short of saying much more. But she was looking down. I followed her gaze and saw her looking at my crotch. But I can't. And I really can't go anywhere. She looked at me again, possibly wondering what I was driving at. My prosthesis is on your side. I can't get to it except by crawling over you. I don't think that would be such a good idea right this minute. Nina scooted away from me down toward the foot of the bed to give me room. I had a wonderful look at her heavenly backside. I swung over to the other side and started putting the prosthesis on. May I watch? She whispered. Okay, I replied. But there's not much to see. I put on the sock-like cover with the padding. I'm slowly developing a layer of toughened skin, but it takes time. She seemed curious and interested, not repelled. I showed her my other prostheses, one for showering and walking in the pool, and a heavy steel-weighted one to exercise my muscles. Doesn't it gross you out? I asked. No. Well, it's a new thing for me, and I wasn't sure how I'd react to it. But it's okay. I know it's part of you now, but for some reason, I look at you and I really can't see it. I mean, it's there, but it's not you. It's not what I'll think about when I think about you. You can take it off, now if you want to sleep, she said. Did you really mean what you said? Which thing? About me being gorgeous and sexy and how if things were different. God, yes, Nina. Please put some clothes on. I'm trying to hold to my principles, but the sight of you is driving them out of my mind. You are so very tempting. She giggled and dove off the bed to retrieve her nightgown where she had slipped out of it. Again, a look at her backside. She sinuously slid it down over her body and was slightly more decent. I had just taken the sock off and was getting ready to swing my legs up onto the bed. I had to muffle a groan from the soreness. It had been a straining day, and my abs were like jelly. May I, please? She begged. I leaned back on the pillow and let her pick up my legs and swing them up to rest on the bed. Did I hurt you? Nope. Very gentle. Thank you. We were silent for a considerable time. Then she said, Danny, I know how serious you were about having to honor. Well, what you mean about being married and all. I promise I won't make any sneaky moves on you. Would you? Would it be all right if I just slept beside you tonight? I want to feel you. I want to feel your presence. I rolled over to look at her. Oh my lord, Nina, you are trying to kill me. Okay, but clothes on, understood? Nina grinned and leaped up onto the other side of the bed like a schoolgirl settling in for a sleepover. So you can get to your prosthesis, she said. She slid under the covers, careless of how her nightgown was pushed well up to the top of her thighs. I tried to lie on my back on the edge of the bed away from her, but that was unnatural for me. I normally sleep on my side. I tossed uncomfortably until Nina whispered that she was a side sleeper, too. I rolled away from her, and she did the same. But the sag of the mattress made our buttocks bump together, and there was no way I could deal with that. The touch of her was electric. I rolled over to face her, and she did the same. That left me looking closely into her beautiful green eyes. She giggled again as she watched my eyes try to find someplace not to look. You know, you aren't making this any easier, I grumbled. I'm finding I have very mixed feelings about what I just promised, she whispered. Maybe if we spooned? She rolled away from me, and I slid over slightly to spoon with her. This is absolutely not going to work, I muttered. She snorted in amusement at my plight. We switched by both rolling over onto our left side. She was now spooned up behind me. She wore the gossamer nightgown, but it was barely there. But there was no other way to sleep. She sighed and snuggled against my backside. Good grief, I thought. I will surely die from all the blood from my entire body rushing to my meat. Her arm stole over my side and played with my chest hair for a moment until it slid down and rested on my stomach. Nice, she murmured. I was just grateful that it stopped there. We both drifted off to sleep. I was having the most intense sexual dream about Nina when I was awakened by a light tapping at my door. I barely had time to raise my head off the pillow when the door swung open. Keith and Maria Grant looked in. We figured you'd be here, Nina, Maria chirped. Sorry to butt in, Danny, Keith said. As I became fully awake, I became aware to two things. One was that Nina and I were completely uncovered. The other was that Nina's left hand was on my chest. I reached down and hastily tugged the sheets over us. Nina was awake now, but she didn't move. Feeling foolish, I said, This is not what it looks like, Mrs. Grant. Maria smirked. This I gotta hear, Danny. Keith said, We just wanted to tell you that there will be some people here fairly early tomorrow. Or actually today. I'm setting down an old-fashioned alarm clock, so don't expect to get much more sleep. It's almost 5. The clock is set for 7, and the people will be here at 8. No, really, I said to Maria. We really didn't do anything. Or at least I didn't. And we aren't going to, either, Nina pouted. Despite all appearances, we were literally just sleeping together. Keith Grant stared at me. Danny, if you can literally just do that with my daughter, you are a much more resolute young man than I thought. Especially with where her hand is, Maria added. That was an accident, Nina said. I must have grabbed it in my sleep when I was having a wonderful dream. But she didn't let go right away. Not while they were there. The next day, I met with some more of Keith's staff members. I remembered 2 of them from Cargill. I was a bit embarrassed at the way they treated me. I was learning that this hero business seemed to be a permanent presence that affected how people looked at me. By now, to me, the events of the ambush seemed like 100 years ago, but to people who had recently seen the video, it was fresh. And I guess if you had been there too. Like now, these staffers were people with degrees, some of them advanced degrees, who worked every day on important legislation, and I was a complete greenhorn, lucky enough to be given the opportunity to join them. I was grateful to be able to talk to them and to learn from them, but they seemed to think it was an honor to be able to do it. Geez, would I ever be able to get back to being just a regular Joe? I think that this was hero worship of a kind, and I didn't know how that would work on a day-to-day basis on a job. It got so I was hoping for someone to whap me upside the head for being dumb about something, because I thought I was. Sometimes, I was out of my depth in some of this, but they just patiently explained things until I got it. At least I seemed to be picking things up okay. I was pretty sure that I wanted to join up with Keith and his team. I was daunted at the range of things that everyone seemed to think I could master in a short time, but it would not be for lack of trying. Like my father taught me. After lunch, Nina volunteered to drive me back to Walter Reed. I was wary of her since last night. Wary? Hell, I was near terrified of her. Or of how she affected me. After her parents had left, she had removed her hand from its resting place, but had snuggled closer and gone to sleep like she was completely comfortable. I did not get much sleep before that alarm went off. I wanted her so much I ached. She had some kind of hook set deep inside me by now. And it wasn't just the sexiness. I'd already shown I could resist that. It was just about everything else about her. What had Maria said about women? We can be very proprietary once we've staked out what we want. I had a feeling I had very little to say about whatever was going to develop between Nina and me. On the way, we talked about many things. She was in graduate school at George Mason University, going for a master's in communications. She wanted to be able to help her father with that aspect of his job. To a working legislator, multimedia communications were a huge tool. I had learned something about that morning. She smiled and said that she looked forward to possibly working with me on the staff. She did apologize for her ambush last night. I should have listened to Mom about you. Look, Danny, I've made it plain that I'm very interested in you, and that hasn't changed. I don't think it will ever change. So I'm done trying to force your hand. But I sense that I rattle you, and I'd like to flatter myself that it's because I affect you. And by that, I mean I think you have some feelings for me. No, you don't have to say anything. And I understand what Mom was trying to tell me about your code of honor. It just makes me love you all the more. Does that word scare you, Danny? It used to frighten me. Love, commitment, life partner, all of that. Not anymore. So no more ambushes. We'll be seeing a lot of each other, and I'll keep it strictly friends. Okay. And then she moved on to discuss some bills before Congress, and which way her father was leaning on them and why. The ride was over very soon, and she leaned over and gave me a light kiss before I got out. Just friend to friend, Danny. But remember this. I can be patient, but when you are free, you are going to be mine. Might as well get used to it. And then she gave me another kiss, not at all light. Very Shannon-esque. Damn, how do these women get so good at this stuff? I walked back into the hospital thinking about her. I almost walked past some people I worked with every day. They were very complimentary about the way I was just walking along with my crutches slung over my back. I had been on my prosthesis almost the whole weekend. I was getting close to being completely comfortable. It was just a matter of a little more time. But Nina, damned lovely maddening Nina. She had made her case and staked her claim. All right. She said she could wait, and I knew that she was pretty sure that I would see things her way. And if the truth be told, I thought she was probably right. I had thought I wasn't quite ready for love and romance. I was determined to hold to my mindset about waiting until the divorce went through, but it was becoming clearer and clearer to me as I spent time with Nina and thought about her that I was bewitched. I still worried about not knowing her very well, nor her me. I thought I was a pretty ordinary guy. Once you got past the video and medals and all that, I wondered if she could ever really settle for life with me. She had no idea what married life was like. I thought of our future like it was like an ad for a movie or a TV show. Can the pampered daughter of a rich, powerful congressman be content to be the wife of a lowly congressional staffer? I already knew what I wanted the answer to be. Damn, might as well start picking out the silverware pattern. Carl came up to see me again and fill me in on events. Emma was not going to contest the divorce. She had filed a request for child support against Warren Fletcher. So far, she and the family had not been successful in getting a court order for a DNA paternity test. As far as Carl could tell, Warren was now sweating. He'd boasted too much and too specifically about having an affair with Emma. Carl was working on that. How many of his cronies might be persuaded to testify to that? How much of that might be needed to get a court order for the testing? Hard to say, but Carl and the family were trying. I told him to pass along my thanks. Danny, I gotta tell you something. I've heard why you don't want to come back home to Harlan, and I understand how you feel, but I think you're way off base. I think you're misjudging the town. Yeah, they know about Emma and the baby. Thing is, that's all on her and the a-hole who nailed her, which is not common knowledge yet, but it's starting to get around. Most of the decent people of Harlan see Danny Walker as a great hometown hero who risked his life and was badly treated by people who should have looked out for him. They all saw that medal ceremony and it reminded them how proud they are of their native son. Danny, I get around and talk to lots of people. Now, I ain't saying there aren't a few a-holes who may have a snicker at, well, all that, what you call all that cuck stuff, but they are damned few. If I had to put a number on it, I'd say that 99.8% of Harlan folks are damned proud of you. We've had people down from network TV interviewing about you. They talked to your old coach, some brother officers, and people they stopped on the street. We've seen that on the news shows. You think that don't make us feel proud for Harlan? Now, look, I know you don't want to hear about this, but they want to see you. They want a parade. Some people have chipped in to commission a damned statue of you battling that crazy explosive guy. Hell, they want to name a library after you. I can't even guess how many little Theodores and Theodoras were registered at the hospital this past couple of months. The people that know about the baby are on your side. Everyone is, like I said, except for the a-holes. And I say, screw them. You wouldn't give them the time of day if you passed them on the street. Nobody worth a damn would. And there's something else. I ran into Mayor Lucas and told him I was coming up to see you. He wants you to come down and talk to him about a job, something him and the town council have been talking about creating for you. Something to tie together public safety, like fire and police and emergency medical services. And using your in with Congressman Grant to see about getting federal money for first responders, and like that. That's what the decent people of Harlan think of you, Danny. Wow. I said I'd have to think about it. I said I didn't want to look like I was milking the hero thing. Milking? That's crazy. Shit, Danny. This is what the people want. I swear to you. Like it or not, you are a permanent West Virginia war hero now, like Sergeant York. That ain't never going to change. Think about it, buddy. I'd go to see that parade myself. Carl also told me that my old tank mates Pete and Skip were slightly wounded in a training accident with a live grenade, and were on their way back home. They would need no rehab, so they'd be on a lot faster schedule than mine. I knew I'd have to go down to Harlan just to see them. Jubal was going to finish out his extra couple of months. After Carl left, I was scheduled for a medical evaluation. The doctors and therapists were very happy with everything. The stump was looking very sturdy and healthy, despite all the walking and exercise I had been doing, and they thought I was getting close to be ready for discharge. They said I could do outpatient rehab almost anywhere in the country where there was a VA or DOD medical facility. Where will that be, Danny? My therapist asked. I can get you set up at the nearest center to Harlan. Or would it be around Washington? I looked at him in surprise. It was then I realized that there were no secrets in Washington. They knew about the job offer. I wondered if I would be getting calls from realtors for choice close-in locations within easy commute of Capitol Hill. I guess it was just presumed it was a done deal, that I was going to work for Keith Grant. Then I thought, well, isn't it? Hey, I never thought to ask what my salary would be. Then I thought that no matter what it was, it probably would not be able to keep Nina in the lifestyle she was used to. By then, Nina was becoming the center of all of my thinking. There was no point in kidding myself. I was in love with her for keeps. Then I remembered that I had once thought the same thing about Emma, but I put that thought aside. Nina was not Emma. I went from the evaluation session to rehab, maybe one of my last here. I worked on balance and stairs and slopes, both up and down. It was tiring, but nothing like some of the earlier grueling sessions. It wasn't that I was doing less, but that I had greater stamina now. All that gut-busting work was paying off. I began to think about what Carl had said. I called Keith Grant's office, and they said he'd call me right back. When he did, I asked him what he thought about me going back for the parade thing. Danny, I think that would be great for you and them. I get calls and emails all the time asking how you're doing. I'd say do it. They'll make you proud, and you'll make them proud too. Just go along with whatever they want to do. They're very anxious to show you what they think of you. Heck, if I can, I might go down there for that parade myself, but just as a spectator. He said he'd talk to the mayor and get a date for the parade in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I told him about the Harlan job offer idea and said I appreciated it, but that I wasn't interested. I said I definitely wanted to work for him. We agreed that I'd officially start June 1st, just over a month from now. Keith said he'd have his staff send over the paperwork. 1 June would be when I'd be officially full-time, but he wanted me on the payroll now, and Cy would want to get the ball rolling on getting me a permit for a weapon and looking into the coursework we discussed. I told him I'd like to ask Nina to come down with me to Harlan. He laughed. Maria's been telling me it was just a matter of time, but I'm delighted to see she was right. You'll have to ask Nina yourself, but I'd bet real American money that she'll be all over it. Maybe I'd just like to show her off, I said, but it'd be nice to show them that Danny Walker is doing very nicely. Thank you very much. And Keith, to tell the truth, I was looking for an excuse to spend more time with her anyway. We need to get to know each other better. Does the sleeping together platonically count at all? He asked. I recognized the needle, but didn't mind a bit. It seemed that no matter what my misgivings or concerns about possibly marrying Miss Nina Grant were, no one in her family had the slightest objection. Now, I had another, ulterior reason to go back to Harlan. I wanted to look up Warren Fletcher. I was trying to think up a way to beat the crap out of him and get a DNA sample at the same time. I had images of using the kick muscles to bring my heavy steel prosthesis up between his legs to crush his balls. Unfortunately, I couldn't think of any way to get his DNA involuntarily that would stand up in court. Were the rules of evidence different for civil cases? Which is what a paternity case would be. Bringing Nina with me would certainly eliminate my chance for any revenge scenarios. I kept getting invitations from Shannon to go to lunch with her, and I finally took her up on it. I was in uniform, of course. I was still in the Army and I had nothing dressy with me, just sweats and shorts and stuff. We met in a fancy downtown Washington restaurant. She told me the tab was on her network and would be considered an interview. She kissed me when we met at the door, but it was more of a friendly kiss than the last one. She was impressed by the lack of crutches. I was on the prosthesis almost all of the time now and was getting better at stairs and slopes. When we went in, the maitre d' came rushing over and led us to a table that put us in the center of all the diners. The people looked around to see who was coming in with the VP treatment. Then they stood up and started to applaud. I said they really put on the dog for network correspondence. Danny, you must be kidding. I'd be lucky to get a table by the kitchen. This is for you. Have you forgotten the video? Just smile and nod and wave. Washington loves its heroes. The hero thing again. Was I ever going to get away from that? I stood and grimaced and nodded and waved like she told me to. Shannon finally told me it was okay to sit down now. My ears were burning by then. I was very conscious of being the center of attention. A word I'd once read swam into my mind. Cynosure. We tried to talk, but were interrupted by people who wanted to come up and shake my hand or get my autograph. You'd better get used to it, Danny, for a while at least, she said. They mean no disrespect. And that was the thing. They were very respectful. I'd seen on TV how celebrities can get mobbed by fans. If I was a celebrity, they were being very polite. Over and over, men and women came up and thanked me for my service and said they had been thrilled to watch the video. I thanked them and signed whatever they put in front of me. All through this, Shannon sat smiling at me. I started to apologize for delaying her meal, but she laughed. I expected nothing less. I have to confess, I get a kick out of seeing how clueless you still are about your status. She took my hand. My hero, she said, just like before the medal ceremony. Just then, several distinguished-looking men came in and were led to a table near ours. Shannon whispered, "Those are 2 senators and a CNN anchor. They'll be the center of attention from now on, and we can talk and eat in peace." And she was right, except for a few minutes when each of the 3 came over and wanted to shake my hand. We ordered, or rather I let her order for both of us. Then she asked me for a rundown of what I'd been up to. I told her I was about to get discharged, both from Walter Reed and from the Army. "So are you looking at want ads for tank gunners?" She teased. Then she said that she knew about Representative Grant's job offer and that I had accepted it. She seemed pleased for me. "You'll be a very fine staff aide for a straight shooter like Keith Grant," she said. "That benefits both of you. So, how are you coming along on getting that divorce?" "About 5 more months," I said. There was what seemed like an awkward pause. At last I said, "Look, Shannon, I may be reading too much into some things that have gone on in the past, but I feel that I should tell you that you're getting serious about Nina Grant." She interrupted with a smile. "Danny, I've been hearing that for quite some time. There isn't much in Washington that can stay a secret." "Well, I made no secret that I was interested in getting to know you much better, but I can't compete with Nina. She has had the inside track all along, I think. But at least you can satisfy my curiosity about something. Did she really climb into your bed and try to seduce you while you were asleep?" "I heard a rumor." I tried to deny it, but I know my ears were flaming red. Shannon laughed. "God, stay out of politics, Danny, whatever you do. You can't lie worth a damn." "Well, she's a real handful, but you strike me as more than her match, Danny, and I hear that she simply adores you. That's a good place to start. Now, tell me the truth, Danny, and I'll know if you're lying." Your ears will turn red. "Do you love her?" My ears did burn again, but I managed to say, "No comment." "Not bad, Danny. Maybe you might do okay in politics, after all." "Well, I'll say, slightly sincerely, that I wish you both the best." She took my hand again, and I was very conscious of a lot of interested eyes upon us. She leaned across, very close, and put her mouth near my ear. "Danny, dear, if there's any justice in this world, a man like you deserves the best. And if the best for you is Nina, instead of me, well, I'll have to live with that." And she kissed me, lightly on the ear. which did burn again. Then she pulled back. So, when's the wedding? Shannon, I'm still a married man. Oh pooh, Danny. Weddings take a lot of lead time. I suspect that Nina and Maria were already well underway while poor unsuspecting you still thought he had any say in it. It's just the way we women work. I just wish I had worked faster. Maybe I should have jumped you in the hospital while you were looking up my skirt. Damn, she could make my ears blush. We finished our meal and parted on the best of terms. Shannon was a damned fine woman. I did go to Harlan, and Nina did accompany me. They gave me a parade and showed me where the statue was going to be. It was based on a freeze frame from the video, the point when I threw myself into the fourth assassin and started driving him back. Pretty melodramatic, for my taste. But Nina pointed out that it was a faithful rendering of the true event. I never get to go to look up Warren. On that trip, Nina rode herd on my every moment, which the townspeople thought was very romantic. She looked and conducted herself like a fairy tale princess, and Harlan loved her. Nobody but me gave a shit about my marital status. They booked us into the honeymoon suite at the big motel off the interstate. The big bedroom had a king-sized bed. And yes, we slept together chastely, but Nina wound up with a handful of me by morning, again, every morning. Two things did happen with regard to Warren within a month of my trip. One was that Mrs. Warren Fletcher came to call on Carl. Yolanda Fletcher was tired of being cheated on so flamboyantly. She wanted to gather evidence of adultery, and instead of going to a detective agency, she went to Carl and hired him. She said she'd heard he was a fine detective. Carl had a great time getting depositions and whatever other solid evidence he could. He told me he was such a fine woman he wanted to do his very best. Yolanda Fletcher filed for divorce grounded on adultery. There was so much swirling around the town about Warren's activities that he didn't even bother contesting it. Women were coming out of the woodwork, claiming that he had tried to seduce them and, having failed, had drugged them. There was no way to prove it, but there it was. There were also two children whose mothers claimed that Warren had seduced them and fathered the children. But Warren still could not be compelled to give up DNA material. Yolanda and Carl had only discussed fees in a sketchy way. He later said he'd have done it for free for the fun of it, but she wound up paying him $500 and then moved into his bachelor house and shacked up with him. Carl had been widowed for over 16 years and had simply not felt up for the dating game after having been married for so long. But he was still a vital man, and Yolanda was a neglected, passionate, attractive woman. She also brought with her copies of DNA tests made of the two Fletcher kids many years before, when there had been a push to get records on file of kids in the event of kidnapping. Both children were through school and off working. As their parent, she had the right to release the records. A comparison with Dan Jr.'s DNA showed that it was 99.99+% certain that they had the same father. Warren was ordered to pay child support. The only things that Warren could do to earn a living were cop-related. While nothing he had done could be classed as crimes, if he skipped out on his payments, as a deadbeat dad, he couldn't do police work anywhere. Renee, cops don't make what cops do. So now he was saddled with alimony for Yolanda and child support for not only Dan Jr., but also for the two other out-of-wedlock children who also had the same father per DNA comparison as Dan Jr. and the Fletcher kids. The other Warren-related thing came when I had visitors. Until I got a steady income going, I had been invited to continue to stay with the Grants. Maria got a call from the gatehouse saying that there were two rowdy men named Pete and Skip who demanded to see their old tank buddy Danny. Maria buzzed me, and we went down to greet them. Keith Grant broke off his day to come home to greet them warmly. He remembered the great service they had done during the attempted assassination. Hell, they were on the video too. We had a barbecue and Keith called Jack and Cy to come over to join us. We made merry and swapped war stories, and they told me of their own wounding and treatment. Keith took note that they had gotten some poor aftercare treatment in the latter portions of their Walter Reed stay. After the party, he put them up for the night. I wound up sitting by the pool late. Everyone, including Nina, left us to talk in private. They were both happy for me, begrudging me none of the good fortune I'd had. Skip did most of the talking. Hell, Danny, we knew you was the best of us from the time we got hooked up together in training as a tank crew. You were a better driver than Jubal, but the best of all of us on the gun. Nothing that happened in Iraq surprised us. When you shot that a-hole during the sandstorm, you were all bent out of shape because you thought you might have killed Pete. We figured if he'd have gotten that explosive on us, we'd all be dead. So we owe you for saving our lives. Just like those folks at Cargill. Later on, whenever they'd show that video and we were around, we were proud to say you were our tank mate. Well, we owe you, and here's something we brought you to repay you. He brought out a small styrofoam container. It was cold to the touch. The Skip nodded to Pete. His turn to talk. I was only home a short while when I got real worried about Sarah. That's my wife. She was in poor health for some reason, and I didn't think I was getting straight answers. I mean, she was all over me in bed and all that, like she was crazy happy to have me back, but she was so weak all the time. They said it would take her time to recover. I said, recover from what? Just some sickness, they said, evasive-like. I went through some bills and letters from the hospital and discovered that she had had a miscarriage 2 months before, a bad one. I went to her and asked, what the hell, Sarah? She went hysterical, and I had to call the doctor in to help get her calmed down. Her mom told me that Warren had come sniffing around her, preying on lonely war wives again. But Sarah told him to leave her alone. Somehow he got her alone and did something to her drink. She didn't remember anything much after that, but she woke up with strange stains on her dress. She filed assault charges against Warren, but like everything else he'd done, he covered his tracks well. The courts are so damned reluctant to force DNA testing unless there's some other evidence like witnesses. Sarah was almost ready to take herself out if I didn't believe she was innocent, that she was a victim. Well, I did, and I told her, and we're back together and she's getting stronger every day. But I called Skip to come over and he did. And we talked. We already knew about your Emma, Danny, Skip said. Kinda different, but Warren was at the bottom of it. And now this with Pete, Sarah. We decided it was time to put an end to Warren's games. We came down to Harlan and followed Warren around, figured out his schedule. He made a late-night patrol out beyond the town limits each night to grab some chow at a roadside diner and tear off a piece of the woman who ran it. One night, we caught Warren out coming back from the diner and took him down. He put up a good fight, but he couldn't take 2 mountain boys. Make a long story short, we cut off his willy and balls and cauterized the wound with a red-hot poker. Then we dumped him on the driveway leading to the county hospital's emergency room. That their box has his balls frozen in dry ice. Pete has his meat in a tub of brine, getting pickled. But the balls are for you. We got your back, Dan. We took care of taking out the trash for you. Anyone ever bothers to investigate it, it'll never come back to hurt you in your great new life, Skip finished. What could I possibly say except thanks? I took the box. I think I'll take them to a taxidermist and have them stuffed. Someday when Nina and I have a place of our own, I'll hang them up over my mantle. Thanks, men. Hey, what are buddies for, Danny? Skip said. Look, thank the congressman and his wife for us, but we mainly come here to give you that trophy. It's nice of him to offer us a place to sleep, but Sarah doesn't like me to sleep away from her, Pete said. So we'll be getting back on the road. Give us an invite to the wedding, Danny. My Sarah wants to meet the big hero. Will do. And thanks again, men. I saw them out the gate. Like I said, hard men. When Warren recovered, he was deemed unfit for police duty. He never did speak very clearly, so he couldn't work in the dispatch center. So they put him to work in the police garage, gassing up and washing cruisers. He always walked around hunched over, a far cry from the movie star handsome rake who had ruined so many lives. Carl eventually asked Yolanda to marry him. He said he just wasn't comfortable with the shacking up thing. She said okay, and they did, and they had a good life together. On the night when I saw the boys off, I stashed the box in a freezer, clearly marked, and made my way to my room. Or rather our room, because Nina had taken up permanent residence there, determined to wear me down. I thought about what I'd said to Skip and Pete. Someday when Nina and I have a place of our own, I'll hang them up over my mantle. As I stripped down to my shorts, I could see Nina in the light from the bathroom. Without clothes, of course, I had to tell her every night to put on her nightgown. Temptress. I stroked her hair. Then I said, Nina, are you awake? She wasn't, but she always awoke easily when I spoke to her. Oh, hello, lover. Would you mind handing me my nightgown? Not right away, we have to talk. That brought her up wide awake. It was funny. Here she went to great lengths to expose herself to arouse me, but now she suddenly felt the urge to cover herself up with her arms, which were not adequate for the task. Nina was a well-endowed young woman. I pulled up the bedsheet to help her out. Thanks. Danny, what's up? What are we talking about? She actually looked a little fearful. Okay, Nina, what's your main plan for me? Seduce me? Seduce me first? Marry me later? Or is it the other way around? Oh my God. We're having this conversation right now? Well, let me get my mind straight. The other way around sounds medieval. No for that. What I definitely want is door number 2. Seduce, then marry. But honestly, that's just because we can't get married for almost 4 months, and I want you so very, very badly. If we could get married tomorrow, I'd wait one more day for the other. Wait a minute. I know what your game is, Danny Walker. You're trying to get out of proposing to me. You come waltzing in here, leering at my body, and just start taking our marriage for granted. I have never in all my lascivious suggestions said word one about getting married. All I've said over and over is that I want you. I want to make love to you, and I will make you mine. I've talked about you getting out of your marriage, but never about us getting married. You are the one who's brought that up. What on earth makes you think I'd even consider marrying you? Well, that stopped me. Nina, are you saying that you don't want to marry me? You just were saying about you'd marry me tomorrow. Oh, that was just a hypothetical. You were talking about door number 2, and I was answering a hypothetical about it. Hypotheticals don't count. Now don't get all worried, dummy. I'm not saying I don't want to marry you. I'm saying that I want to be proposed to properly so I can make you miserable waiting for my answer. I was confused. But you want me to make love with you, right? Oh yes. Absolutely. Why? Are we going to right now? Oh, Danny. And she rose up and plastered herself against me. Now I was completely confused and very visibly horny. Nina, honey, darling. See, this is why we have to talk. I am confused. She slowly pulled herself away and sat with a small smug smile. That's because you are a man. Shall I go have Maria come in here and explain it? No. The last thing I needed was my maybe or maybe not future mother-in-law muddying up the waters here. Okay, I said, cautiously. So what you want is for me to propose to you. So you can tease me with your answer? She nodded, all smiles. Okay, Nina. Will? Oh, no you don't, Danny Walker. Did I mention that I was confused? She lowered her voice. No you don't. You are not going to sit here beside me in the privacy of our bed. Our sexless bed, may I point out, and mumble out some lame-ass will you marry me, babe? That is not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is that we will be at dinner with Mom and Dad and a whole lot of our friends. It may be here or out at a top restaurant, but there have to be lots of witnesses. And you will get up, get down on one knee, take my hand, and then you may mumble out your lame-ass will you marry me, babe? In other words, I want you to make a public spectacle of yourself and put yourself at my cruel mercy. See? I saw. I had to snork to suppress a chuckle. And just what is so funny, Mr. Walker? Well, who's going to help me get up when I'm down on one knee? Instantly her mood changed. Oh my God. Would it hurt you to do that? I never thought about your prosthesis. Maybe you could use your other knee? Would that make it easier? Oh, Danny, I didn't mean… Nina, I said, kissing her worried face. I'm actually pleased that you forgot about my hardware. I was just joking about needing to be helped up. I can do it okay right now. In a few weeks, I'll be leaping up from one knee, I promise. Now, I went on, you were having fun with me, and I was loving it. Please go on about how you will torment me waiting for your answer. She sighed and gave me a little gentle love tap with her hand. No, let me think about it a little while more. Okay, I said. That face kissing had been very nice, so I did a little bit more of it. Nina held up her lovely face to be kissed. Nina, let me get a little bit hypothetical on you? She nodded. I was speaking between kisses. Suppose we get past the proposing part and the punishing tormented wait part. Suppose at some point, you hypothetically say yes. Have you ever considered the problems we're going to have with our male children? She opened her eyes. Problems? Male children? What are you talking about? All boys tend to be rambunctious, but that's hardly a problem. No, I mean their physical problems. They will all be born with their lower left leg missing. What? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Why would you think that? I made my face look troubled. Well, I've lost my lower left leg. So that change will be reflected on my Y chromosomes. That's what carries the male traits. When we mate, if my X chromosome mates with your X chromosome, the result will be a beautiful little Nina Walker, as lovely and perfect as her mother. But if my Y chromosome mates with your X chromosome, the result will be a handsome little Danny Walker, only he'll be lacking that lower left leg, because he will inherit that trait from me. I looked at her with the straightest straight face I could manage. I watched Nina as she was struggling to make sense of the complete line of bullshit I had just fed to her. God, she is so lovely, I thought. Now, Maria swore to me afterwards that she wasn't snooping, merely a restless night person who often wandered around the house late at night. It just so happened that recently, since I had moved in, and Nina had moved in with me, her wandering ass often took her down the hall near our door. Not that she was trying to eavesdrop or anything, but she said she yearned to hear the sounds of love and passion. She was not old-fashioned, like me. She couldn't care less about the countdown to my divorce. She thought that Nina and I were young and in love, and would get married in due time. She couldn't understand why I was so stubborn. That evening, instead of sounds of love and passion, what Maria heard was, you sick, rotten, a-hole. It'll be a cold day in hell before any of your lame Y chromosomes ever get within 10 feet of mine. She said she distinctly heard the sound of something thudding against the door, just as I yanked it open and slid through. "You'd better run, you sick a-hole," wafted through the opening before I pulled it shut. Then something else crashed against it, something fragile and breakable. I straightened up, laughing, to see the shocked look on Maria's face. I had to hastily tuck, myself back inside my shorts. "Oh, just a little advanced foreplay, Mom. Taking it to the next level," I said. "Maria, I'd say be careful when you go in. Nina has good aim, and she'll be expecting the next person through the door to be me. When you do go in, whatever you do not tell her that I'll be sleeping out in the first cabana." Maria later told me that when she did go in, she'd expected to find her daughter in tears. She said Nina was lying across the bed. These kids certainly know how to dress for a fight, she thought. She saw that Nina was making convulsive movements and took them for deep sobs. But when she called Nina's name, she came up laughing. When she got control of herself, Nina said, "That's smartass. Oh, how I hate him, Mom." I was stringing him along about making him propose and how I was going to torment him, making him wait for my answer. I had him sweating. Then all of a sudden, he got me off track and he started in being all serious about our deformed male children and... oh, he really had me going there with that complete line of BS. I almost believed him. God, I'm going to kill him when I see him. Well, I am. Where did he go, Mom? He said something about hiding out in the first cabana. In fact, he specifically told me not to tell you that. Oh, he did? Huh. As if I would even consider going there. Nina got up and headed for the bathroom to freshen up and make herself beautiful. He's really funny, Mom. I can play him for a little bit, and then he turns it on me. I hate it, but I love it too. He's exasperating. She turned and headed for the door. Nina, honey? What? Is my hair all weird or something? No, but I don't think you should be walking the halls without clothes. Oops. Thanks, Mom. She quickly put on a fairly modest robe and headed out. Then she stuck her head in the door again. Mom, his divorce will be final the end of August. What did you think about a September wedding? Could we pull one off that soon? Think about it. Oh, and Mom? I think tonight is the night. She went in search of her prey. That would be me. We battled it out. She wanted to and said she wanted to. I wanted to, but said I didn't feel right about it. Eventually we compromised. We agreed to reserve the ultimate intimacy until after the end of August. But that left us a lot of room for a lot of things. Things that I had barely scratched the surface with when I was with Emma. All in all, it was a great relief, and made us after play cuddling all the better. How I loved this girl. To the others, Nina lost a certain amount of a notably edgy quality. She combined her schoolwork with planning and detail work on their upcoming nuptials. When Nina and Maria began working on the guest list, they asked me to join them. They asked me to come up with a list of my friends and other people from Harlan that I'd like to invite. They'd already put down the mayor and other Harlan bigwigs. I said, Carl and Yolanda, Pete, Skip and Jubal. I thought of some others. Then I took a breath and said, Elise, Lloyd, Emma, and my sister, Diane and her boyfriend. I think that's a very good idea, Danny, Maria said. Yes. Time to start healing some old wounds, I think. Nina, why don't you call Carl and Yolanda and get some more names from them? Carl kept telling me there were other people who stood up for my good name. I don't want to leave anyone out. Warren accepted. I went full-time on staff June 1st. It was like jumping into a roaring rapid, but I began to catch on and thought I got into the full flow of operations in a short time. Everyone else on staff was great to me. I found that some of the long talks I'd had given me a head start on things. Keith wanted me along on all trips to his home district and elsewhere in West Virginia. When he was stuck in Washington for committee hearings, I sometimes stayed with him as staff support, and sometimes went down to Keith's district office 32 miles from Harlan. There I monitored and tweaked ongoing projects and oversaw constituent services. I guess, to many of Keith's district's residents, I kind of became the face of constituent services. Keith said that was what he wanted. This was the most basic level of Keith's local responsibilities and brought me into contact with mayors and county councilmen of all stripes and both parties. Politics at the local level. Surprisingly, there was less difference of philosophy down there than I saw on the national level. There is no Democratic or Republican way to fight for benefits for a former coal miner suffering from brown lung. We all worked to get him what he deserved. I came to like, or at least respect, most of the local movers and shakers. They seemed to want to work with me. There were times when I was out on a limb promising things on Keith's behalf, or even acting as if I had his authority, but nobody complained. Or if they did, I never got called on it. We were all grappling with the daily problems of working people. With their input, and by picking the brains of Keith's other staffers, I managed to identify small but significant sources of funding for schools and public services providers. And in my spare time, I was plugging away on 2 online courses, one from the American University in Washington and the other from West Virginia U in Morgantown. As her own school schedule and other obligations permitted, Nina spent as much time as possible with me, wherever I was. Then it was August, and then it was the end of August. I was in Washington on the 31st, sitting in on a subcommittee hearing on educational opportunities for people with workplace-created disabilities. When Keith was finally able to make it from another hearing, I gave him a quick, whispered rundown on the testimony and questioning thus far. Then Keith told me to take the rest of the day off. Go home, Danny. Not to the library, not back to the office, home. Consider that an order. You've been working yourself to a frazzle. Take the afternoon off and get some rest. I'll see you tonight. So I got into my car with a Japanese name that was assembled in a plant in West Virginia and drove to my home in the big Grant house in McLean. Jack, Cy, and 4 other of the office staff were over for dinner. Nina's 2 best friends, Rhonda and Joe, were also invited. When Keith got home, dinner was just about to be served and Nina and I were already seated with the others. Keith kissed Maria as they walked into the dining room. Okay, Maria, he said. Now what was the big deal and why was I supposed to send Danny home early today? Oh, I think I'll let Nina start. Nina promptly said, Daddy, you'll never guess what came by courier today. Keith looked properly blank. Then he looked at Maria. She said, Danny got the final divorce papers today. As of midnight, last night, he was a free, single man. Of course that will change again in November. November? I thought the big day was supposed to be October 25th, Keith said. Oh no, Daddy, Nina bubbled. There's a delay in getting my gown ready. And there are a dozen other things that will be so much better with an additional 3 weeks to prepare. She was not only bubbling, she was positively glowing, I thought. Keith seemed to take notice, too. He looked at me. I was feeling pretty good myself, although bone-tired. So, Danny, did you get that rest I ordered? Rhonda snickered. Joe covered her mouth with her napkin to keep from giggling. Not hardly, I answered, looking at Nina, who just looked smug. Keith had to smile. Well, maybe you can make up for it with a good night's sleep tonight, he teased. With a straight face, I said, not hardly likely either. The women all burst out laughing. Keith sighed. This afternoon was to make up for what we didn't know about last night after midnight, Nina said. Tonight will be, well, for tonight. Danny, if I want to keep you around long enough for some long-range plans of mine, I think I may have to order you up a cot for your office so you can get some sleep, Keith deadpanned. Oh goody, Nina laughed. Then I'll have another reason to visit you at work, darling. Keith glanced at Maria. I can hardly wait for you two to finally get married. Once that's over with, you can stop having sex around the clock and settle down like a normal married couple and have hardly any sex at all. Maria reached over and gave him the expected punch in the arm. There was some mustard in the punch, and he knew he was in for it that night himself. November. Huh? Well, I guess it's fortunate that this isn't an election year. This time next year, we'll be going through the usual mad dash for votes. By November, we'll be basket cases. Mid-November, we'll just be recovering. You're going to be even busier for the next year plus, Danny. In addition to everything else, I'll have to be traveling all over my district, asking people for their votes. You'll be shadowing me collecting campaign contributions and meeting the political allies that you haven't met already. He waited until we all had eaten, and then tapped his glass for our attention. I've been kicking this around with Jack and Cy and Maria, and I guess it's time to let you all in on it. This next campaign will be my last for Congress. There was a considerable reaction, from myself as well as the others. Was Keith going to retire, I wondered? He was only 54. 3 years from now, our senior senator, Henry Morton, is retiring. He told me that a few weeks ago. We want to keep the Senate seat with the party, and the National Committee has asked me to run for it. I'm honored and excited about it. Old Henry was my mentor of sorts, and I'd be proud to fill his seat and carry on some of his priorities as well as some of my own. We've sized up the likely other party contenders, and I think I can beat them all out handily. It's possible I might be unopposed in the primary, except for the usual wingnuts. So I'm signing you all up for the Grant for Senate campaign. We were all pumped up at the prospect. The noise around the table was excited and happy. Keith's chief of staff, Jack Grayson, tapped his glass. Ahem. Politics is all about choices and consequences. The consequences of Henry Morton standing down led the National Committee to ask Keith to run for the vacancy. But they want to keep Keith's seat safely with the party too. They've asked Keith to recommend the best choice for his successor. Keith? Keith looked around the table. Like any good politician in this situation, I looked around at all the state and local politicians. Danny, what would you think of State Senator Rance Hoskins for my replacement? I thought about it. Well, he's a good loyal man, but he's never shown much interest in national issues. I'd say he'd be out of his depth in Congress. Just my opinion. Jack Grayson named one of the district mayors and asked what I thought. I told them I didn't think so and stated why. Cy threw out 3 more names. These were men and a woman I had met and worked with and respected, but with all due respect, they could never fill Keith Grant's shoes. Everyone named was flawed, in my eyes, and I laid out the reasons for my opinions. It went on like that. I saw Rhonda and Joe and Nina just listening, very interested. The 4 staff members listened too, and several of them were scribbling notes. I was feeling very uncomfortable. Look, I know I am sounding disrespectful of some very fine West Virginia women and men. They're all good public servants. But you pay me for my opinions, Keith, and I have to give them to you cold and hard. None of these people would even be a sure thing to beat off a good contender. But I don't see any towering candidates over on that side, either. But I don't know many of the other state senators and legislators as well as I do the names you've thrown at me. Maybe there's someone among them who'd do well. Keith chuckled and looked around at Maria and his senior advisors. Those were the names of the best qualified candidates we could think of, and I agree with your assessment of each and every one of them, Danny. So here's the thing. We have to look outside of the usual suspects and find a new candidate. Maria jumped in, someone with name recognition, not just to get elected, but to draw national attention once he's in office. Keith Grant is a congressman from a small state, but he gets national attention when he speaks. Someone who is known to be on top of constituent services and other issues important to my constituents. A person they have all seen and gotten to know, Jack said. And above all, a man of recognized great personal integrity and honor, and someone who has served his country. Cy said. I was beginning to get that feeling in the pit of my stomach like when Pete, Skip, Jubal, and I were waiting to go into combat. My God, I thought, what was happening here? And someone who has a beautiful, loving wife and life partner. That's very important for electability too, Nina added, smiling. That's another reason why our wedding has to be spectacular. I just closed my eyes. Well, after that meeting it was all settled. Even though nobody ever asked me if I wanted to do it. There's one last thing. I've said some things here that sound as if I didn't think that what I did back there that day in Cargill was that much of a big deal. Some of that was just that I was embarrassed that it got so much attention. I firmly believe that there were other soldiers and Marines who did things as daring and brave or braver than what I did, but there were no cameras around to make videos of them. I was just lucky, or unlucky, the way I was coming to see it. And at times I got very uncomfortable with that hero label. Like when Keith staffers made so much of me coming on board, when they were much better at their jobs than I was, until I learned the ropes. And how Nina first got interested in me because I was the hero who saved her daddy's life. Not that I'm complaining about how those things worked out, far from it. Nina would kill me if I did. See, what happened was I got to thinking about me, what impact it had on me, how I felt about everything. I sort of forgot about the other people. Well, I guess some of what I had said got back to Keith, and I think he understood the way I was thinking. It was late in September when I got a note to attend a meeting in one of the nearby conference rooms in the Rayburn building. No specific topic. There were a number of people there waiting when I came in on the dot. I knew many of them. The rest I got formally introduced to later, but I saw their names on name tags as I went around the room. There were Keith, Maria, and Nina, and a sweet elderly lady in a wheelchair, Keith's Aunt Megan, who raised him when his parents were killed. Shannon and her 2 brothers and 1 sister, and her mom and dad. Shannon's top cameraman, Mark Alden, and his wife and 3 kids, and his dad. Shannon's other cameraman, Pedro de la Vega, and his 6 children, a single dad raising 6 kids, and his 2 sisters and their husbands, and his 2 brothers and their wives, and 5 more kids that belonged to Pedro's siblings, and Pedro's mom and dad. They all wore name tags that related them to the first person I named, the people I knew, the people who had been there on that day in Cargill. Shannon's soundman, Evan Harper, and his 2 children and current wife Mary, and his ex, Sandy, plus Brian's Mary's, and Sandy's grandparents, all 6 of them. Shannon's producer, Tom Ralston, his 3 children, his wife Laura, and Tom's dad and mom. Keith's chief of staff Jack Grayson and his wife Annie and their son, a Marine named Chip and Grandma Grayson. 2 other Grants staffers who had been there that day in Iraq, Warren Allison and Francisco Caballo, and their respective spouses Allie and Carol, and their 3 children apiece. Keith said, there are 9 people here who believe they owe their lives to you, Danny. We've all thanked you at one time or another. Now, we'd like you to meet their families. 61 people who have been waiting for the chance to thank you personally for saving the life of someone they hold dear. Each saved man or woman introduced me to their family members, each of whom thanked me for saving their daddy, or mommy, or daughter, or son, or grandson, or ex. Warren Allison's wife Allie taught fourth graders in the Fairfax public school system. She gave me 35 hand-drawn cards thanking me for saving Mrs. Allison's husband's life. Oh, I was simply overwhelmed. I had forgotten the human side in my anger, and sometime annoyance over my own misfortunes and how I was singled out for special treatment. Tears were streaming down my cheeks by the second child who hugged me and thanked me for saving his daddy. By the end of the meeting, I was on my knees with all of the children gathered around me in a big weepy group hug. I shook hands and hugged and kissed these strangers as they bid me goodbye and thanked me again and again. There was no pretense at stopping the tears as the last of them filed out, leaving me with Keith, Maria, Nina, and Shannon. I wasn't the only adult crying by then, either. I'll dispute the big hero label, but I now knew that I really did do something very good back there in that dusty place. At the end, I was sitting holding flowers and Danny bears. Some more things to put over our mantle, Nina whispered. And, I love you, Danny Walker. And I will until the day I die. Shannon said, Danny, there will be one copy of the tape of this meeting for you, and one for each family. And that's it. I will destroy the master, and we have all agreed to never let the tape be copied. I can't speak for the families, but for us, you will never see it. That is my promise and the promise of my staff. So let me sum it all up again. I'm Danny Walker, now 30, about 20% legally disabled, single but not for long, and currently with a great job and facing a scary future in politics. I've settled most of my personal issues and count myself as one of the most fortunate men in the world. And all because of one crazy day in a place nobody's heard of called Cargill. Oh, and did I mention I'm officially a hero? Yep, got the medal to show for it, too. And I'll be damned proud of it for the rest of my life. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.